Chapter 2377. Only in moments of life and death would one do something unexpected. This was the best time to see through a person's true nature. Throw away your weapons or else. The vampire's eyes turned cold, and he snapped the neck of a child. He then said with a bloodthirsty smile, "Don't doubt my words. This is just the beginning. Do you understand? If you resist, I will kill all of these animals." Plop. Immediately after, the vampire threw the corpse to the side without looking back, as if he was throwing away trash. In this world where human lives were as cheap as grass, it was normal for people to die. People died every day, especially to the vampires. What were humans? It was just the value of livestock. UB***starred. Yuichiro Hayakuria's face turned pale as he looked at the body on the ground. The child's eyes were wide open as if he was unwilling to die. "I won't be fooled." Yuichiro Hayakuya exhaled heavily as if he had thought it through. He then said coldly, "If I put down my weapons, my companions will die too. I can't ignore the lives of my companions because of other people's lives." TSKT. What a hypocrite. Didn't you say that you wanted to protect these animals? What about now? Humans are really shameless. You change your attitude faster than flipping a book. The other vampires were full of contempt. However, Yuichiro Hayakuya seemed to have sealed his emotions. He was expressionless and just looked at them coldly. "They won't die in vain. As a reward, I will tear you vampires into pieces to avenge them." Yuichiro Hayakuya's face was ferocious as if he was possessed by an evil spirit. "This is so boring. I was so excited to watch it. The ending is so disappointing." Seeing this scene, Wuchun, who was silently observing, shook his head and leisurely turned around to leave. He originally thought that Yuichiro Hayakuya would sacrifice himself to save the other humans, but it seemed that he was wrong. Although Yuichiro Hayakuya was rather simple and ignorant, he was not stupid. "Come out." Dustless had only taken a few steps when he suddenly looked up at the blue sky. His voice was as light as a breeze. "Akatsuki Ikanase, if you continue to hide in your turtle shell, I don't mind treating you like a vampire. That would be very interesting." These words are really scary. A languid voice suddenly rang out from one of the walls behind the ruins. Raising her head, Ikanase Korea rubbed her head in pain and sighed. As expected of the Golden Reaper that the vampires fear. His keen perception is truly terrifying. "I thought I had hidden myself well enough. You didn't come here just to catch up with me, did you?" Dustless asked faintly. "You've hidden it well enough. It's just that you're full of flaws in front of me. It's just that it's good enough because you're purely fantasizing. It's extremely vulgar." Hearing Dustless's words, Ikanase Korea felt rather awkward. However, she was a thick-skinned person. That only lasted for a moment before she quickly returned to normal. "Of course I'm not here to catch up with you. The vampires are about to launch an all-out war against the humans. I'm here to ask you about your stance." Ikanase Korea went straight to the point. As for the trivial matters of Yuichiro Hayakuya and the others, Ikanase Korea did not interfere. If they could not even deal with those small vampire minions, then it would be better for them to die as soon as possible. "My stance." Hearing this, Dustless fixed his gaze on Ikanase Korea's head and calmly asked, "That's a strange way to put it. I am the general of the Imperial Ghost Army. Of course, I'm on the side of the humans. What other stance can I have?" "That's not necessarily true." Ikanase Korea stared straight at Dustless. No one knew about his past, but she knew a little about it. At the very least, Ikanase Korea had some clues about what Dustless had done in the vampire city. "You suspect that I will side with the vampires? What a joke. A thief trying to catch a thief." Dustless focused his gaze on Ikanase Korea and coldly said, "Also before that, you better be clear about the difference in status between us. I am the general. What is your military rank?" After saying that, Dustless ignored Ikanase Korea and turned to leave. The meaning behind his words was simple. "You have no right to talk to me. I heard that you went to the vampires' territory and caused quite a ruckus." Ikanase Korea suddenly looked at Dustless and said, Ikanase Korea was inextricably linked to the vampires. Naturally, she had received the news that Dustless had caused a huge ruckus in the vampires' territory. I was just bored and went for a stroll. Dustless did not even look at Ikane's Korea. His footsteps did not slow down. Gradually, Ikane's Korea's eyes caught up with him. Stroll. The corners of Ikane's Korea's mouth twitched. She felt depressed. A human going for a stroll in the vampire's territory? What kind of joke was this? Did he have a death wish? In Ikane's Korea's opinion, Dustless was deliberately trying to brush her off. He must be up to something big. This fellow, just what is he after? Ikane's Korea was confused. She looked at Dustless's back and her mind fell into a dead end. She had studied Dustless for many years. However, she had never been able to figure out what kind of character this fellow was. She could not even figure out what his ambitions and goals were. However, no matter what, as long as you dare to stand in my way, I will not let you off so easily. Ikane's Korea stared deeply at Dustless's back and swore to herself. If Dustless were to find out about this, he would definitely ridicule her for overestimating herself. However, Ikane's Korea dared to say such words because she was confident in herself. In her eyes, the blazing angel of termination was an invincible existence. Her research with the Twilight Tribe had reached its final stage. The blazing angel could be put to use at any time. This might be her biggest trump card against Dustless. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus update, 3,000 rewards plus update, 1,000 rating votes plus update, 500 rating votes plus update. Chapter 2378. The Blazing Angel Project had once destroyed the world, and humans were unable to resist it. Therefore, Heine's Hongren also had high hopes for that thing, thinking that it could defeat Dustless. Although it was a little childish to have such thoughts, it was normal. After all, no one knew Dustless's origin. At the same time, Dustless continued to move forward. The defense of Shinjuku was about to begin, and both sides would fight to the death. Since he had nothing to do anyway, he might as well go and take a look. In the desolate city, there was obviously a big battle. Black smoke was still burning, and many vampires could be seen everywhere, as well as the corpses of the King Ghost Army. There was no doubt that the King Ghost Army had been defeated. The streets and alleys had become a paradise for vampires. During this time, many vampires had even come to surround Dustless. Look, there's another human. Let's kill him together. You idiot, don't you see who that is? The nightmare of us vampires. I remember that his name is Dustless, and his nickname is the Golden Reaper. He's the only general in the King Ghost Army. So what? I heard that the reward for killing him is great. Idiot, even if the reward is great, you need to be alive to take it. Anyway, the higher-ups said that we can run away without fighting if we see this guy. We won't be blamed. Dustless swaggered into the city, causing many vampires to look at each other. A group of vampires who could not resist the temptation went to provoke him, but the result was very tragic. They were killed instantly. However, some vampires who had heard of Dustless's reputation decisively chose to ignore him. This was because there was an order that they would not be blamed even if they ran away to avoid punishment. Over the years, Dustless's reputation was too well known, and he was feared by countless vampires. Moreover, he had a habit that everyone knew. He was often alone, and he usually traveled alone. The word companion was completely opposite to him, and he was completely different from the other King Ghost Army members. It was precisely because of this that a noble once led thousands of vampires to besiege Dustless when he was alone. The result was shocking, and the vampires were all wiped out. Therefore, various nicknames of Dustless spread. At least you know what's good for you. Dustless naturally sensed many vampires, but found that they did not provoke or meddle in other people's business. It was better to avoid unnecessary trouble. Although Dustless said that he was a human, that was only on the surface. He had always regarded himself as a neutral. Neither vampires nor humans were good people. Sometimes, when he saw vampires and Emperor Ghost Army fighting, Dustless was too lazy to intervene. It's really as strange as the rumors say. At this moment, a slightly surprised voice was heard. Dustless stopped in his tracks. Not far in front of him, a vampire suddenly walked out. From his attire, one could tell that he was a noble. Scram! Dustless spoke indifferently without even glancing at the man. Hearing this, many vampires were speechless. This fellow had barged into the vampire's lair alone, and even told the vampire nobles to scram. He was simply tired of living, treating his life as a joke. This temper is just as the rumors say, arrogant. The vampire who blocked Dustless's path laughed. It would have been better if he did not speak. Once he spoke, he revealed two sharp teeth, looking rather eerie. However, to everyone's surprise, the vampire didn't get angry despite being looked down upon by Dustless. Instead, he introduced himself politely. First, let me introduce myself. My name is Corey Justford, the 13th ancestor, and also, didn't you hear me when I asked you to scram? Dustless could not be bothered to listen to his nonsense. He showed an expression that said it was for his own good. I asked you to scram for your own good. Otherwise, I'll have another vampire noble dead soul under my hands. Gulp gulp. Many vampires looked at each other, choking with sobs. A human intruding into the vampire's territory alone, and still being so arrogant. This really refreshed their understanding of him. Don't be in such a hurry. I'm sorry for wasting your time. I'm also here for business. Corey was not angry. He had long heard of Dustless's temper. You're not even half as smart as Freed. I don't think he ordered you to come. That kid was like a mouse seeing a cat when he saw me. I didn't need to say anything, and he would have run for his life. Dustless muttered to himself as if he was narrating a trivial matter. However, the other vampires were sweating profusely. A mouse seeing a cat? This description was too exaggerated. Forget it. Just say it. I'm bored anyway. Remember to get me a chair. My waist is not good. It gets sore after listening to people talk for a long time. Dustless waved his hand and looked like he was all ears. Will this guy die if he doesn't be so arrogant? Many vampires complained collectively. How could a human be so arrogant, as if he was a high and mighty master? There were even some vampires who were yelling in their hearts, Mr. Livestock. But what surprised them was that in the face of Dustless's arrogant words, Corey's expression did not change. The corners of his mouth even curled up slightly, and he seemed to be very calm. This guy seems to be up to something. Dustless's gaze suddenly deepened. He didn't feel Corey's hostility and surprisingly tolerated his humiliation. This showed that he definitely had an ulterior motive. All of you back off. Looking at the vampires around him, Corey's gaze suddenly turned piercingly cold. A fight between me and this guy isn't something you can handle. Also listen to him. Hurry up and get me a chair. Upon hearing his words, the vampires felt like their minds were about to explode. Is this a fight? Does he need to get someone a chair for a fight? This is obviously the rhythm of kneeling and begging for mercy. Some of the vampires had even imagined the scene of Corey kneeling on one knee. P.S. I'm back in my hometown. I can't update steadily while in the car. Please forgive me. Chapter 2379. The weather was chilly and the air was a little humid. The cold wind blew gently, but it was exceptionally bone-piercing. Strange, it was fine just now. Why is it suddenly so cold? The vampires were confused and couldn't help but look at each other. Their race was rather special. Cold. They had never felt such a simple feeling before. After all, the excellent physique of the vampires far surpassed that of humans. But now they felt a bone-piercing chill. This was really strange. Oh, this is really amazing. On the other side, Corey's eyes widened in shock. He raised his head and saw a huge crack on the ground that extended all the way to Dustless's feet. That skinny body was like a natural barrier that no one was able to cross. Let me reevaluate your IQ. Dustless sat lazily on the chair and rubbed his chin in boredom. Corey, although you look like a frivolous and half-hearted man on the surface, in reality, I'm very smart, right? Corey smiled and continued. Dustless shook the thumb of his right hand and said coldly, in reality, you are really stupid. You want to sneak up on me with your level? Just a moment ago, the moment Dustless sat on the chair, Corey suddenly launched a sneak attack on him. The move was so powerful that even the ground was cut open, creating a huge and terrifying abyss. However, the sad thing was that it had no effect on Dustless. That seemingly powerful slash was directly caught by his bare hands and was easily crushed like a fruit. You said I'm stupid? Corey frowned and a cold glint flashed across his eyes. Isn't that so? Challenging someone who can crush you. If this isn't stupid, what is? Looking into Corey's blood-red eyes, Dustless asked indifferently. At the same time, his hand suddenly grabbed forward. 10,000 heavenly attraction. Boom boom boom. A violent gravitational force erupted instantly, distorting space and time and destroying the land. A large number of buildings were pulled over. That pair of slender white hands seemed to be the hand of God that could not be defied. The gravitational force covered everything indiscriminately, and no matter could escape its fate. Is this a move that humans can control? Corey cursed loudly. At this moment, his body was also floating uncontrollably. He found it difficult to maintain his balance with his four limbs and floated in the air like a puppet. Moreover, he was constantly approaching Dustless. As long as Dustless moved his finger slightly, his body would sway along with it. This feeling was especially sullen and helpless. He had lost control of his body all of a sudden. Dustless could control Crowley however he wished. Sword, drink my blood. At this critical moment, Corey decisively used all of his power, the sword at his waist suddenly piercing into his palm, the two becoming one. From this moment onwards, he displayed his full strength. The blade that was suffused with silver light also turned blood red. Its luster was as demonic as blood. Swish, swish, swish. He abruptly waved his hand, and a huge crimson beam of light shot toward him. TSKTA. You barely have some skill. Dustless chuckled and ignored the slash coming at him. He looked at Crowley calmly and said, You're the 13th ancestor, aren't you? However, the strength you're displaying now reminds me of someone. Do you know who it is? Boom, boom, boom. At the same time, Crowley's full-powered attack landed on Dustless's body. It was also in this split second that a layer of visible materialized energy swept out of Dustless's body and revolved around him tightly like a water bucket protecting Dustless. Crowley's slash was completely absorbed by this golden energy. What the hell is this? Crowley looked at Dustless in shock and bewilderment. The layer of light outside his body was similar to an enlarged version of human bones. It was so sturdy that it was difficult to break through. His full-powered attack was like hitting a diamond. Forget about breaking it, it did not even leave a mark. There's nothing to be surprised about. This is my Kinsusanu. Although it's incomplete, it's not something you can break. Come to think of it, I used this move to destroy thousands of vampires back then. Dustless's eyes were somewhat empty, as if he had sunk into his memories and muttered to himself. Get over here. The big hand suddenly grabbed again, and the gravitational force erupting from the palm was even denser. Crowley's body disappeared in an instant, and only a black shadow could be seen pouncing toward Dustless. Pay some price for your stupidity. The moment he approached, Dustless suddenly sent out a kick. Bang! Crowley only felt that his face had received a fatal attack. The bones in his face were shattered with a caw-caw-caw sound. Dustless stepped on his face, causing him to grimace in pain. Spare me. If I knew you were so terrifying, I wouldn't have dared to come to a place like Japan. Crowley, whose cheek had been stepped on, laughed bitterly at himself. His words were a little muffled because Dustless had also stepped on his mouth. There's always a price to pay for provoking others. I'm already being merciful by not killing you. As one of the ancestors of the vampires, you should know how many nobles have died in my hands. But you still came to provoke me. What does this mean? Dustless was not in a hurry. His tone paused for a while, and then he said unhurriedly, This situation can only mean two things. Either you're really tired of living, or you're deliberately approaching me. Right, let's talk about that question again. On the surface, you're the 13th ancestor, but your true strength is far beyond this level. Compared to that guy Freed, whose blood did you drink? I think it's that second ancestor. I think he's called Saito. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2380. Saito. To many people, This was an extremely unfamiliar name. Even some vampires did not know him. The number of people who knew about this person could be counted with one's fingers. It was worth mentioning that Saito had retired from the position of the second primogenitor several hundred years ago. It was normal for people to not know about him. However, Crowley was one of the few people who knew about Saito. Several hundred years ago, during the Middle Ages, Crowley was still a human. Surprisingly, he was also a knight. At that time, he drank a special blood that caused his body to undergo a qualitative change. Because of that, he became a vampire. The person who gave him the blood was freed. However, the blood was not his. Instead, it was the blood of the second primogenitor, a man named Saito. It was worth mentioning that Freed also drank Saito's blood. The two of them could be considered brothers. However, regardless of whether it was Freed or Crowley, neither of them had any good impression of Saito. They wanted nothing more than to get rid of him. Ayaya, you are truly incredible. You even know about such a major secret. How terrifying. Crowley said casually as he carelessly rubbed his head. He looked very frivolous, but in reality, his heart was raging like a storm, filled with shock and astonishment. This sort of thing. Who told him about it? Was it Freed? That shouldn't be the case. Although that guy is unreliable, he at least understands the severity of certain things being exposed. He will definitely be killed. Crowley scratched his head and pondered. Suddenly, he felt as if the world no longer revolved around vampires. What do you mean by waiting for the beginning? Since when have humans become so smart? Furthermore, it was such a secretive matter. It seemed that other than him and Freed, no one else knew that he had drunk Saita's blood. Everyone else thought that Crowley had drunk Freed's blood. But where did Dustless obtain this information? This was too puzzling. Seeing your confused expression, it means that what I said is true. Dustless's tone was as calm as water. There was not the slightest fluctuation in his voice. No one could tell what he was thinking. There is one thing that I must admit. You are truly terrifying. Crowley took a deep look at Dustless. He felt as if he was looking at flowers through a fog. He discovered that he was unable to see through this person. This person of unknown origin, powerful strength, and capable of suppressing all nobles, and a human at that, was undoubtedly terrifying. Especially if one offended him. Looks like you have nothing to say. Dustless suddenly stood up, and moved his bones a little. A crackling sound came out, giving people the feeling that he was about to beat someone up. Damn it, I can't afford to offend this guy. Raising his head abruptly to look at Dustless, Crowley was filled with regret. Especially when he heard the ka-ka-ka sound from the handshake, he broke out in cold sweat. He felt as though he had shot himself in the foot. Buzz buzz buzz. In that instant, Dustless abruptly raised his right foot, condensing a huge flash of light and aiming at Crowley's body. A blazing edge of destruction immediately spread out. Light speed. Hold on. Seeing that Dustless was about to launch a kick at him, Crowley hurriedly waved his hand to stop Dustless. He hurriedly explained in a loud voice. To tell you the truth, it was Freed who sent me to look for you. It was all a misunderstanding. Please don't take it to heart. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Hearing that, the light that was ignited by Wu Chen's right foot slowly extinguished. Wu Chen frowned slightly and fixed his gaze on Corey's face. He asked, he should understand my strength. It's impossible for him to allow you to provoke me. You're just asking for trouble. Yes, that's what he told me. But, Crowley's tone sank slightly as he said solemnly, however, this is a serious matter. I still can't completely trust you humans. Moreover, I also have doubts about your strength. That's why. Sorry to offend you. At this point, Crowley's tone was incomparably awkward. He scratched his head in embarrassment. He wanted to test Dustless, but the result was too horrible to look at. He was crushed by that terrifying absolute strength. I think there's too big of a misunderstanding. After a moment of silence, Dustless slowly said, First of all, although you're a vampire, your essence is still human. It's really laughable to say that you don't trust humans. Secondly, Dustless's tone softened, his gaze unwavering as he looked at Crowley. I think you're mistaken. From what you said, you want to discuss something with me. Did I agree? The next question is, Dustless's tranquil gaze instantly turned awe-inspiring, revealing a murderous intent. Test my strength? Yes, but I forgot to tell you that you'll have to pay a price. Boom boom boom. As his voice faded, the extinguished light under Dustless's feet flashed again. Moreover, it was even brighter and more ear-piercing than before. The flash was as terrifyingly hot as the sun. This bastard. Upon seeing this, Crowley's pupils shrunk abruptly as he sensed an unprecedented crisis. Without looking back, he lifted his head and retreated at the fastest speed in his life. Although Crowley's reaction was extremely fast, he was still a step too late. After all, the speed of light was too fast. Compared to the speed of light, the speed of a vampire was simply not worth mentioning. He was so weak that he was instantly engulfed by the destructive light wave. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Boom boom boom. The golden light beam tore through the horizon and pounced straight at Crowley's body. Intense, blazing flames instantly soared into the air and burned wildly in the atmosphere. Due to the overly ferocious flames, even the sky turned red. The oxygen and moisture in the atmosphere evaporated rapidly. It could be suffocating at any time. It was extremely dangerous. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2381. Gulp. Gulp. Seeing such a scene, Corey could not help but jump in fright. He had never seen such an exaggerated scene before. It had even subverted his understanding of the world. It was no wonder that Corey's performance was so exaggerated. It looked like a simple kick, but the destructive power it unleashed was beyond imagination. I know I'm wrong, please let me go. Helpless, Crowley could only beg for mercy. His tone was humble and full of pleading, completely losing the noble character of a superior vampire. This submissive begging tone was more like that of a prisoner. Lord Corey, fight him to the death. Some of the vampires who could not stand it any longer roared, endless anger brewing in their words. Since when could a lowly human step on the heads of vampires and flaunt their prowess? Heavens, this is too much. However, Corey's performance was truly unflattering, even shameful. They did not dare to swing their swords. Stop, let's talk things over. Corey hid behind a pile of rubble and shouted at Dustless. Sadly, he was ignored. Dustless did not even look at Corey from start to finish, as if he was a pawn that was not worth mentioning. Boom, boom, boom. The thick beam of light blasted onto Crowley's body, followed by an explosion. Endless shockwaves spread out, blowing the ground bare. Even the sand and stones underground were blown up, exposing the moist depths of the ground to the scorching sun. As for Corey, you shouldn't be dead, right? The power of that kick was shocking. But vampires are a special race. It seems that only ghost curse equipment can destroy you. Dustless lowered his head and said beside a crater. Beneath his feet was Corey. No, calling him Corey was not the truth. Only Corey's head was left beneath Dustless's feet. As for the rest of his body, they were all dismembered. Although he did not directly kill him, the feeling of being dismembered was unforgettable. Your Excellency must be joking. Even if you don't use ghost curse equipment, you can still easily destroy vampires. This is a well-known fact among us vampires. Corey said with a fake smile. He was extremely sullen in his heart. The main culprit who had chopped him into 8 pieces was right in front of him, but he didn't even have the courage to challenge him. No, he had already challenged Dustless just now, but the result was that he was now in such a miserable state. See, it's still effective. Hearing that, Dustless's lips curled into a smirk that deserved a beating. He muttered to himself casually. Crowley, actually, I'm not afraid of you being angry. I just feel that if I beat all of you vampires up, you'll be smarter when you talk, right? Corey was like this back then. Thinking back to the first time we met, he even said that he wanted to capture me and turn me into livestock. After I beat him up, TSK, he became very obedient. Dustless was boringly recounting the past, but Corey was quivering as he listened. It was undeniable that after being taught such a harsh lesson by Dustless, he was much better at speaking than before. At the very least, he did not put on airs and put on airs. No matter what, he would talk after he beat him up and let him understand his own identity and position. This was Dustless's method. It was very direct and rude, but it was undeniable that this method was very effective. At the very least, it made Corey obedient. Do you understand yourself better now? Dustless's eyes were still cold, and his words were also very cold. I understand. Corey's face was bitter. His body had already been dismembered. How could he not understand? He was still alive not because he was lucky. Corey knew that Dustless did not intend to kill him for the time being. All right, cut the crap. Tell me, why are you looking for me? Dustless casually sat on a rock and leisurely swung his legs. His tone and attitude were very frivolous. It's very simple. You've already said it before. Corey took a deep look at Dustless and said with a bitter tone, you should also understand that although I'm the 13th primogenitor on the surface, my true strength is only that of the 7th primogenitor. To kill the 2nd primogenitor, Saito, that kind of monster is impossible for me to defeat. Towards the end, Crowley's tone was extremely sorrowful, revealing a sense of helplessness and desolation. This was the powerlessness of the weak. Facing a vampire of a higher level, he simply had no strength to resist and would be instantly killed. What you said is the truth. After staring at Corey for a while, Dustless nodded slightly. As a transmigrator, he knew that what Corey said was the truth. Saito was indeed freed and Corey's father. However, the two of them did not have a good impression of this father. They even wanted to take Sato's head immediately. As for the deep hatred between them, Dustless was not interested. That was the problem between the two of them, father and son. I understand now. After a few seconds of silence, Dustless looked directly into Corey's eyes with his shining eyes. It was as if he could see through one's mind, causing one to not dare to look into his eyes. You want me to kill Saito, right? I can do that, but what benefits will I get? If I remember correctly, Freed seems to be working with the humans. He wants to use the Seraph of Termination to kill Saito, right? You bastard! After hearing Dustless's words, Corey's heart trembled. The person in front of him knew and understood far more than he imagined. Even some top-secret plans that Corey did not know about were known to Dustless. Humans are unreliable. Corey suddenly shook his head and said in a self-deprecating manner, in the eyes of humans, vampires are very dangerous and terrifying. But perhaps they don't know that in the eyes of vampires, humans are even more dangerous and terrifying. Who can be sure that those humans who control the Seraph of Termination will help us? Everything has to be prepared. Don't you think so? Dustless. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus updates, 3,000 gifts plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2382. Dustless Kun? Hearing this form of address, Wu Chen's eyes twitched slightly. He stepped on Corey's head, and the cold air emitted from his indifferent gaze seemed to be able to freeze the air. The temperature suddenly dropped to the freezing point. Make it clear to me. I'm not familiar with you guys. This form of address isn't something you can casually use, Dustless said coldly. That voice was like ice, and it was so cold that Corey could only shiver. I understand. Of course, of course. Corey quickly changed his words. His voice was filled with endless fear. Now that he was chopped into pieces, he would definitely be finished if he continued to provoke Dustless. But this time, you're really lucky. You guessed it right. Dustless suddenly changed the topic and said indifferently, I know that Ikane Sakari and that Twilight person aren't good people either. If you work with them, the vampire will be eaten sooner or later. In the end, you're just shooting yourself in the foot. The Twilight people's ambition was to become the king of the world. An existence like the vampire was too much of an eyesore. Once they obtained or successfully researched the Seraph of Terminus, the first person they would deal with would be Dustless, followed by the vampire. You're right. Corey didn't comment and smiled embarrassedly. If that's the case, we can be considered as people in the same camp, friend. Bang. Hearing that, Dustless's eyes turned cold. He kicked out and Corey's head flew out. He was caught off guard and ate a mouthful of soil. Mind your tone, my friend. That kind of thing is too redundant for me, Dustless said coldly. Not to mention a vampire like Cory. Even Si Tianli, the leader of the Emperor Ghost Army, didn't dare to talk to Dustless like this. Ah, what an unreasonable guy. Cory was rather distressed, but his mentality was good. He quickly felt relieved and pursed his lips. But there's no doubt that we're in the same camp. Hearing this, Dustless remained silent, his cold eyes quietly looking at Crowley. How about this? Dustless, who had been silent all this while, suddenly spoke up. It just so happens that those two idiots are not pleasing to the eye. You vampires, take care of Twilight Man and Ice Hanren for me. Of course, no problem. Without even thinking about it, Crowley immediately agreed to Dustless's conditions. He was a smart person and knew that this was a transaction. Dustless must have promised them some benefits. As for that Saito, Dustless's bored face was filled with anticipation. He said with interest, "To be honest, I've been very bored recently. Let's treat that Chi-Tung as a toy to pass the time. I hope he won't disappoint me." After saying that, Dustless lazily left. He didn't need to say anything else. As long as that guy called Saito appeared, Crowley would inform him. That guy is really outrageous. He actually dared to treat the second ancestor as a toy. TSK. As expected of a vampire's nightmare. Crowley sighed, but he couldn't deny that humans were very good at killing enemies who were several times stronger than them, or even invincible. As for Ice Hanren and Twilight Man, please die in peace. I'm really sorry. Who asked this world to be so cruel and merciless? Those who aren't suitable can only be eliminated. Looking at the blue sky, Crowley muttered to himself. There was nothing he could do about it. This was the rule of this world. How is it, Friedcoin? This is considered a triumphant return, isn't it? In a quiet villa, only Fried and Crowley were present. Both of them drank Sato's blood. To a certain extent, they could be considered brothers. Oh, of course it is. If you had informed me in advance, I might have specially organized a party for you to celebrate. That guy agreed. What a pleasant surprise. Fried was also full of smiles, but he also couldn't hide the doubts in his eyes. Friedcoin, it seems that you still have some questions. Don't tell me you're suspecting me? After drinking a mouthful of scarlet blood, Crowley didn't seem to care. However, his tone revealed some dissatisfaction, giving off the feeling that he was extremely displeased with Fried's attitude. Thinking about it, it made sense. After all, he had almost lost his life to complete the mission. In the end, he was suspected by his own people. No matter who it was, they would probably complain in their hearts. No, you're mistaken, Crowley. From the beginning to the end, I've never suspected you. After all, we're all from the same faction, Fried said with a smile. When he smiled, his appearance was quite bewitching. He was even more beautiful than a woman. From the beginning to the end, you've never suspected me? Who are you trying to fool? Crowley curled his lips in disdain. As Fried's companion, he knew what kind of person Fried was. Hiding a knife behind a smile was his specialty. But there's one thing I don't understand. Why did that guy want us to deal with Ice Hanren? Don't you think it's strange? For Dustless, killing Jimu Run and Akatsuki is as easy as blowing a breath. Fried expressed his doubts, wanting to understand Dustless's purpose very much. Friedcoin, the thoughts of some people are not something that we can guess. If you can't get over it, then don't think about it. Crowley recalled Dustless's unfathomable eyes. They were like the ocean, without a bottom to speak of. Perhaps he felt that these two toys had no value to play with, so killing them would only dirty his hands, Crowley added. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus updates, 3,000 gifts plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2383. Toy. Hearing Crowley's disdainful explanation, Fried fell silent unexpectedly. He had interacted with Dustless before, so he had some understanding of this guy's temperament. Perhaps it was just as Crowley had said, that Dustless disdained killing two people, and felt that it would dirty his hands. Although Toru Twilight was a lieutenant general and a member of the Sea family, He had been taught a lesson by Dustless too many times. He was often beaten up in front of many members of the Imperial Ghost Army, which made him lose face. Therefore, Toru Twilight hated Dustless to the core. To put it bluntly, the world might think that Toru Twilight's mortal enemy was the vampires, but that was not the case. If the Seraph of Termination's research was successful, the first test subject would definitely be Dustless. No matter what should we do next? Crowley looked at Freed. He and this guy were in the same faction, so all he needed to do was to follow orders. There was no need to ask about anything else. Is there a need to ask? Of course, we will collude with Dustless. Freed immediately agreed and smiled proudly. The second ancestor, Saito. No, to be precise, the clash between our father and Dustless. Do you think it will be exciting? Of course. Crowley nodded in agreement and scratched his head. But it seems that we have no chance of interfering in that kind of battle between monsters. The moment we appear, we will be killed. I know, right? So let's just watch quietly. Freed shrugged, not feeling embarrassed. Suddenly his eyes flashed and he sneered. But the basis of our cooperation is that we kill Toru Twilight and Ike's Hanran. We can't afford to offend a big shot like Dustless. If that's the case, we can only let them die. Where did you go? As soon as he returned to the territory of the Emperor Ghost Army, Dustless was stopped by a little ghost. This kid was quite young, and was wearing the exclusive uniform of the Emperor Ghost Army. He was quite handsome and had two big eyes that were bright and full of spirit. However, his tone was full of all kinds of unkind, and even had a kind of questioning tone. He had an imposing manner. This kid was not an outsider. He was also a member of the Imperial Ghost Army, Hayakuya Yuichiro. Kid, are you talking to me? Dustless looked around and realized that there was no one else around. He looked around and realized that he was the only one here. Dustless looked at Hayakuya Yuichiro in confusion. He didn't know what he was trying to do. Are you doing this on purpose? Hearing this, Yuichiro was furious. He felt that he was being looked down upon. Who else could it be other than you? However, Dustless's reply left Yuichiro dumbfounded. I don't have time to play house with you. Get lost. Dustless didn't say much, he only gave Yuichiro this sentence. Are you looking down on me? Seeing this, Yuichiro glared at him. Dustless's cold eyes didn't have the slightest emotion. He felt that he wasn't respected at all. It was as if he was looking at an ant. I do look down on you. Dustless didn't hide it and said bluntly. You want to question me and even want to know where I went. Tell me, who do you think you are? Yuichiro was just an ordinary soldier. Dustless, on the other hand, was a real general. This kid wanted him to report to him? He must be dreaming. You. Hearing this, Yuichiro was so angry that he gritted his teeth. However, he couldn't refute. Not to mention him, even his superior, Akito Ikase, was a nobody in Dustless's eyes. I know why you are blocking my way. Dustless suddenly lowered his head and looked at Yuichiro. He guessed, let me guess. You want to know if I have any news about Byakuya Michael, right? Humph, you broke into the vampire's camp alone. There must be some important information. Our Emperor Ghost Army is about to go to war with the vampires. It will be beneficial for us to know more information. Hayakuya Yuichiro retorted with a flushed face. He looked at Wu Chun with an open and candid look. TSK, this is a perfect lie. Dustless clicked his tongue and then laughed evilly. Oh, is that so? I forgot to tell you. That vampire called Byakuya Michael was cut into pieces by me. Since you want to die, I will fulfill your wish. The moment Wu Chun finished his sentence, Yuichiro Hayakuya instantly turned hostile. His breathing became faster and more exaggerated. His eyes were bloodshot and his eyeballs were completely red. Swish, 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 swish. Yuichiro didn't show any mercy. He raised his ghost curse equipment and slashed towards Dustless's Achilles heel. Seems like I guessed correctly. Wu Chun smiled proudly. As for the oncoming saber light, he completely ignored it. Clang, clang, clang. Just as the blade was about to hit Dustless, a black shadow rushed over and blocked the tachi easily, intercepting Yuichiro's attack. Xiaoya, get out of my way. I am going to tear this guy apart. Yuichiro's eyes were spitting fire when he saw Xiaoya blocking his attack. He wanted to burn her alive. TSK, how scary. Wuchen maintained an elegant smile all along. He raised a finger and said lazily, "You want to kill me with this kind of trash? Forgive me for being blunt, but using a finger to deal with you is unnecessary. You are too weak. Fight me to the death if you have the guts." Yuichiro roared crazily. His blood-red eyeballs were about to fall out. It was eerie and scary. It was all because of Michael, this special family member. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus update, 3,000 gifts plus update, 1,000 comments plus update, 500 automatic subscriptions plus update. Chapter 2384. To Hyakuya Yuichiro, the most important person in his short life was undoubtedly Hyakuya Michael. Although the two of them weren't related by blood, they were as close as brothers, or even closer than that. At this moment, when he heard that Hyakuya Michael was killed, especially when he was chopped into 8 pieces and his corpse was destroyed, Hyakuya Yuichiro was immediately enraged. He stared at Dustless with murderous eyes, wishing he could swallow this eyesore alive. Yo, your relationship is really enviable. So deep? Wu Chen's face was full of ridicule and banter. His attitude was frivolous. You deserve to die. Hyakuya Yuichiro glared at him. Dustless's nonchalant attitude made him even angrier. The veins on his forehead were bulging. Killing someone should at least show a guilty expression. But what kind of attitude did Dustless have? Such arrogance, that playful smile, and that lack of remorse had deeply infuriated Hyakuya Yuichiro. I'll give you one more chance. Apologize to me now, or else. Hyakuya Yuichiro was filled with murderous intent. There was a hint of crazy killing intent in his words. That face that could be considered delicate and pretty also became sinister and distorted. His hatred for Wu Chun was engraved in his bones, and his hatred was as deep as the sea. You want me to apologize? Hearing this, Dustless couldn't help but laugh. He stared at Hyakuya Yuichiro for a moment and said coldly, "That kid wanted to attack me, so I chopped him into pieces. You want me to apologize to him? Is your brain made of paste? Use your brain when you speak, kid." I don't care what the reason is. Since you dared to harm Michael, then, that's not right." As if he suddenly remembered something, Hyakuya Yuichiro suddenly exclaimed and said in disbelief, "A few years ago, when I escaped from the vampire city, he was killed by those noble vampires. How did you chop him into 8 pieces? Absolutely impossible." It was also because he had witnessed his loved ones being killed by vampires that Yuichiro's personality had become distorted. The tragic death of Michael had provoked him, and he hated vampires to the core. He wanted to destroy this race at all costs. However, Dustless had said that he had chopped Michael into pieces. Wasn't that bullsh*t? You tricked me. Hyakuya Yuichiro's face turned ashen. He was so angry that smoke was coming out of his 7 orifices. Wu Chun had underestimated his intelligence. The most embarrassing thing was that he had been fooled. This made Hyakuya Yuichiro even more furious. He wanted to bite Wu Chun to death. TSK. You only realized it now? Dustless's face was full of disdain, and then he mocked. I don't need to lie to you, kid. That guy is indeed alive and well, but it's also true that he was cut into 8 pieces by me. But his body is very special, and he didn't die. Of course, I didn't have the intention to kill him at that time. Hearing this, Yuichiro remained silent. He knew about Dustless's strength. Even if they had never fought in a life-and-death battle, Dustless's nickname, the Golden Reaper, was given to him by the vampires. It was enough to show how much the vampires were afraid of him. A race that was afraid of a human. It was enough to show how unfathomable Dustless was. You're already in your teens, and you still don't know anything. Your age. Don't tell me you've been living like a dog all this time? I say Sonran students are really bad. Dustless muttered to himself. Yuichiro's face was blank, and he didn't seem to understand what Dustless was talking about. But I saw Michael being killed with my own eyes. Yuichiro said stubbornly. He's indeed dead. Dustless nodded and couldn't deny it. He replied. As a human, that guy is indeed dead. However, he's no longer a human, but at this point Dustless showed a hint of schadenfreude. You still don't understand, right? That kid's nature has changed, from a human to your favorite vampire. Boom boom boom. These words were a blow to Yuichiro. His whole body was like a statue, and he didn't move at all. Nonsense. How can a human become a vampire? Do you think I'm a 3-year-old kid? Yuichiro was stunned for a moment before he said angrily. No, you've got it wrong. A 3-year-old kid's IQ is higher than yours, Dustless said. Even though Yuichiro was 15 or 16 years old, he could be very childish sometimes. Among the vampires, there are some special existences, nobles. After drinking their blood, humans will change and become vampires. Don't you think it's hard to believe? Actually, that's the truth. Some vampires were humans a long time ago, but because they drank the blood of their ancestors, they became vampires. Wuxia said tirelessly. He glanced at the petrified Yuichiro and said faintly, "Do you understand now? That kid, Michael, has become a vampire. So what's your choice?" When he spoke up to hear, a mischievous smile appeared on Wuqian's face. His glowing eyes were like a venomous snake that emitted a dim gray light, causing others to shudder. Your most beloved friend suddenly became your archenemy. Hee, isn't this interesting? Dustless's smile became even more evil. Hyakuya Yuichiro's head was buzzing nonstop. He was very excited when he heard that Hyakuya Michael was still alive. However, he fell silent when he heard that he had become a vampire. He was quite conflicted and didn't know how to face Hyakuya Michael. He had always wanted to eliminate all the vampires. Now that his family member had suddenly become a vampire, it was a big blow to him. Yuichiro. At this time, Yuichiro Hyakuya's friends also came. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus updates, 3,000 gifts plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2385. Without a doubt, the so-called gang of scoundrels referred to his teammates. No matter where he was, they would circle around him like flies. Perhaps this was the so-called protagonist's aura. His charisma was infinitely magnified. His strength is average, but he's quite popular. Dustless said calmly. He glanced around and saw the 3 mistresses, 3 leaves, Jun Tsukasa, Yuichi Zaoi, and even Sasuke Xiaoya. Of course, at least he's more popular than someone like you. Yuichiro Hyakuya looked at the crowd and felt relieved. He had suffered a blow from Dustless. Fortunately, there was someone to help him recover his health. He lifted his gaze and gently looked at the few people who had rushed over. Then he stared at Chua Xiaoya and swept his gaze over her. However, his brows furrowed slightly. This is interesting. Seems like it's worse than I thought. Dustless also noticed Yuichiro Hyakuya's frown. He suddenly understood something and smiled. Dustless and Sasuke Xiaoya had a good relationship. After all, the two of them had known each other for many years. Dustless even gave Sasuke Xiaoya some pointers. However, this was equivalent to offending Yuichiro Hyakuya. He hated Dustless very much. Hence, he was more resistant to Sasuke Xiaoya. Sometimes he would even disobey some orders. Of course, after knowing that Dustless almost killed Michael Hyakuya, Yuichiro Hyakuya's hatred for Dustless deepened. In addition, Yuichiro Hyakuya's relationship with the 3 mistresses and 3 leaves was also very bad. The two of them were like natural enemies. Whenever they met, there was no need for others to instigate them. Are you an idiot? Are you tired of living? Do you know who you are talking to? If you want to die, don't drag us down with you. The 3 mistresses and 3 leaves were shocked and angry when they saw Yuichiro Hyakuya provoking Dustless. Wasn't this playing with fire? Wasn't this pushing them into a fire pit? Who was Dustless? He was the only invincible general in the Supreme Ghost Army. He was regarded as an invincible legend. Over the years, he had been fighting everywhere, killing vampires. Because of Dustless's appearance, the number of vampires had decreased sharply, and they were no longer as arrogant as before. There was no doubt about Dustless's strength, but now, Yuichiro was provoking such a big shot. What kind of behavior was this? What a typical brain-dead retard. Sir Dustless, I'm sorry but this guy's head is abnormal. Please don't lower yourself to his level. Although we are in the same team, this guy is like a child who hasn't grown up. The 3 palaces and 3 leaves ran to Dustless and bowed in apology. There was a trace of fear in their voices. Don't worry about it. Wuxian just smiled gently when he heard this. And then he waved his hand and said with relief, I know that this fellow's head isn't normal, so don't worry. He won't go so far as to vent his anger on all of you over such a trivial matter. Phew. The 3 palaces and 3 leaves heaved a sigh of relief when they heard this. Their hearts that were hanging in the air finally relaxed. Traitor. Seeing this scene, Yuichiro, who was extremely disdainful, snorted coldly. He was extremely disgusted. You idiot. The 3 palaces and 3 leaves were so angry that their lungs were about to explode. She had begged for mercy for him, but this guy was stubborn and did not appreciate it at all. Now he even called her a traitor. The 3 palaces and 3 leaves were so angry that they gritted their teeth. That's enough, 3-leaf-chan. He is such a person. At this moment, Sasuke Xiaoya's voice suddenly sounded. Her face was calm, and she was not surprised at all. That guy hates Dustless. What's more important is that you are stabbing him in the heart. His pride won't be able to take it. Dustless was Yuichiro's life and death enemy. The 3 palaces and 3 leaves did not care about his feelings, and lowered their heads to Dustless. How could Yuichiro tolerate this? It was not surprising that they would fall out with him. It seems that because of my existence, there is a big misunderstanding between you guys. It seems that the team with good teamwork is going to be finished. Looking at the changes in their expressions, Dustless muttered to himself. In the original work, Sasuke Xiaoya's team had good teamwork. But because of him, they were going to have internal strife now. Dustless did not care about this. Anyway, it had nothing to do with him. Then, Sir Dustless, can you give me your autograph? The 3 palaces and 3 leaves blushed like a budding flower. Regardless of whether Dustless agreed or refused, she took out a pen and paper. Autograph. Hearing this, Dustless was stunned. He asked in surprise, I am not a movie star. Why do you want my autograph? Even to vampires, I am just a butcher. Oh, it seems that you don't know yet. Sasuke Xiaoya looked into Dustless's eyes and said, You are a famous big shot. You have a lot of fans, especially many women who regard you as their dream lover. Hearing this, Dustless did not know whether to cry or laugh. Immediately, he stared at the 3 palaces and 3 leaves who were looking forward to his autograph. Without wasting any time, he picked up the pen and wrote down his name. You are good-looking, but your handwriting is too ugly. Sasuke Xiaoya complained about the crooked handwriting. Well, this is not what I am good at. Dustless did not care, but the 3 palaces and 3 leaves kept Dustless's autograph like it was a treasure. She made a standard 90-degree bow. Thank you. In the human world, Dustless was a well-known big shot. Wherever he went, he was invincible. He was known as the strongest human. In these years of battles, he had built up a lot of prestige. Therefore, he had a lot of fans, and the 3 palaces and 3 leaves happened to be one of them. This bastard, where does his charm come from? On the other side, Hyakuya Yuichiro was complaining. He looked at the 3 palaces and 3 leaves and said indignantly, This woman looks smart. Who knew that she is the type with big boobs but no brain? P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus more chapters, 3,000 gifts plus more chapters, 1,000 comments plus more chapters, 500 automatic subscriptions plus more chapters. Chapter 2386. Hyakuya Yuichiro was extremely angry. It wasn't that he was jealous of Wuxian. Both of them already didn't like each other. Especially Wuxian, no matter how he looked at him, he was an eyesore. His stinky face made him feel stifled. Hyakuya Yuichiro's friends, Jun Yuichiro and Zainu Yuichiro, were his hardcore supporters. Naturally, both of them supported Hyakuya Yuichiro without hesitation. I still have something to do. I'll leave first. The war with the vampires will be very dangerous. Dustless smiled and rubbed Zainu Yuichiro's head. He still had to deal with the second ancestor, Saito. He didn't have time to waste with this group of brats. Wait. However, There were always some brats who thought they were infallible blocking Dustless. Hyakuya Yuichiro warned coldly. You dared to injure Michael and leave so casually? Do you think it's appropriate? You're asking me if it's appropriate. Don't you think this question is too redundant? Hearing this, Dustless couldn't help but sneer. He snorted and said, He's a vampire, and I'm a human. I'm already merciful for not killing him. You still ask me if it's appropriate? This question is too idiotic. When humans and vampires meet, it's a matter of life and death. Now Hyakuya Yuichiro asked him if it's appropriate. It's ridiculous. Dustless didn't kill the kid and let him live. It's a great mercy. You should leave something for me too. Without saying anything, Hyakuya Yuichiro took a few pills and swallowed them. Many people saw this scene and were stunned. They were so shocked that they didn't know what to do. Are you crazy, Yuichiro? After a while, Jun Yuichiro and Zayinu Yuichiro raised their voices and looked nervously at the crazy Hyakuya Yuichiro. Let alone them. Even Mia, and Zayinu Yuichiro were surprised. The pills that Hyakuya Yuichiro took were specially developed. 1 pill could increase his strength. 2 pills would put his life on the line. TSK, it seems that this guy's hatred for me is deeper than vampires. Really, you only took care of Hyakuya Michael and didn't kill him. It's not like you're targeting yourself. Do you have to be so desperate? Dustless scratched his head. Because of Hyakuya Michael, Hyakuya Yuichiro hated him. His ferocious eyes as if he wanted to kill Dustless. Ayo. At the same time, a strange roar came out of Yuichiro Hyakuya's mouth. It was deafening, and there was a substantial shockwave, which caught everyone off guard and forced them to retreat. And Zayinu Yuichiro, Yuichiro and Zayinu Yuichiro, and one were sent to the ground in a sorry state. What the hell is that thing? Is he possessed by a demon? Looking up, everyone exclaimed one after another. They looked absent-mindedly at the scarlet-eyed Yuichiro, and all of them couldn't help but suck in a few mouthfuls of cold air. At this moment, Yuichiro was completely out of the human category. Pure black tree branches grew out from his back. They were extremely strange and messy. They looked like wings, but they didn't look like wings at the same time. He gave people a creepy feeling as if he was a fallen angel from hell. His whole body was emitting an extremely evil aura. Looking at him made people panic, as if they were being stared at by a devil. Gulp. Everyone was sobbing as they looked at Yuichiro Hyakuya's strange appearance. Many people's expressions changed drastically as they stared at Yuichiro Hyakuya with extreme caution. They subconsciously stepped back and took the initiative to distance themselves from him. Is this guy still human? Looking at Yuichiro Hyakuya, who was neither a human nor a demon, everyone felt dizzy and lost their minds. The only one who could remain calm was Dustless. That decayed and oppressive deterrence was definitely not something a human could possess. TSK, I was just bored and now you've brought me a good toy. I really want to thank you, Yuichiro. Dustless's lips curled into a happy smile as he felt Yuichiro's murderous aura that wanted to destroy the world. His eyes widened and his interested look made everyone speechless. Of all the people you're interested in, why are you interested in such a monster? He's not a beauty like me. Sasuke complained narcissistically. But he looks like this. Sasuke Xiaoya's gaze was focused on Hyakuya Yuichiro. Although this guy's aura was terrifying, she was not afraid because she knew that Wuchen was here. Even if it was dangerous, it was a plane that could be easily crossed. It was not even a roadblock. What surprised her was what Yuichiro had experienced. This was obviously not an experiment of the Emperor Ghost Army. At least, she definitely didn't know what kind of monster this was. Ow ow ow. Another monstrous cry sounded out from his throat, and it was deafening. The nearby Emperor Ghost Army's attention was drawn over, and they looked at this monster in shock. It wasn't that they were timid, but the aura of this monster was too terrifying. When those blood-red eyes glanced at them, they felt as if they had fallen into hell. Damn it! Why did he come out early? Such a big commotion attracted Ike's Honrin's attention. Looking at Yuichiro's posture, she frowned and clenched her fists subconsciously. Yuichiro was his trump card. He didn't want to use this trump card to turn defeat into victory so soon, especially when it was used on Dustless. Although his relationship with Dustless wasn't good, they weren't enemies either. Now that Yuichiro went berserk against Dustless, wasn't this the beginning of a falling out? Ha ha ha, although I don't know what's going on, isn't this good? Unlike Ike's Hongren, the Twilight people cheered loudly and couldn't help but clap. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus update, 3,000 gifts plus update, 1,000 comments plus update, 500 automatic subscriptions plus update. Chapter 2387. What a powerful monster. What the hell is that thing? Seeing Hyakuya Yuichiro go berserk, many people felt a chill down their spines. He looked like a demon in human skin. His insides had been taken over by the devil. How could a mere human face the demonized Hyakuya Yuichiro? Seraph of End. An angel that can end everything? What a low-class name. End everything? Even if you overestimate yourself, you should know when to stop. Dustless's words were filled with disdain. He did not take Hyakuya Yuichiro seriously at all. Haha. I don't care what it is. As long as it can kill Dustless, I will feel better. After all, this kid is part of Red Lotus's Moon Demon group. It must be related to him. Dark Twilight remained calm and composed. His true relationship with Ike's Red Lotus was one of cooperation. Even so, he was inwardly furious. To think that Ike's Red Lotus would conduct such a terrifying experiment behind his back. Was it Twilight himself? Xiaoya, you guys back off. I am the only one in this game. Dustless's expression was calm. He took a few steps forward leisurely while facing the raging wind. Such a powerful monster. Is my teammate? Mia Mai held the ghost curse weapon tightly. Her gaze toward Hyakuya Yuichiro changed. There was fear and disbelief in her eyes. She seemed to be shocked by Hyakuya Yuichiro's strength. There's no need to be envious. Although this guy is powerful, this kind of strength is dangerous and fatal. Moreover, it doesn't belong to him. In the end, he's just borrowing it. In the end, this guy is just a test subject. This is the tragedy of a chess piece. Dustless looked at the dissatisfied girl and explained calmly. He was not afraid of Hyakuya Yuichiro's scarlet eyes. He did not even frown. Test subject? Why haven't I heard of such an experiment? The others did not seem to care about this question. Only Xiaoya Mia, who was a member of the Dark Twilight family, narrowed her eyes. As a member of the Dark Twilight family, she was considered a high-ranking person. She knew about some experiments. However, she had never heard of this experiment. You'll have to ask Ike's Red Lotus about that. She was the one who brought Yuichiro back. Dustless shrugged and said unhurriedly, I remember telling you a long time ago that you shouldn't trust anyone because they won't hesitate to deceive you. Ao. The crazed Yuichiro seemed to understand Dustless's words. He immediately roared angrily, as if he was extremely dissatisfied with Dustless speaking ill of Red Lotus. Swish. 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 In the blink of an eye, Yuichiro moved. He gently stepped out, and the ground cracked. It was just a step, but it gave people the illusion that he had crossed hundreds of meters. In the blink of an eye, he arrived in front of Dustless, and the dangerous Tachi fell from the sky. It's over, it's over, it's over. Many people shook their heads and sighed when they saw this scene. They could not bear to look at Dustless. It was as if they did not want to see the only general of the ghost army fall. For everyone, the current Yuichiro was too abnormal. He could be said to be invincible. Dustless was also very strong, but he would definitely be finished in the face of such a monster. He's very strong. Looking up at the blade that was coming for his head, Dustless pursed his lips and smiled. He casually raised a finger. Clang clang clang. This small finger was like an indestructible diamond. When the sword came down, there was no reaction at all. It was like two pieces of steel colliding with each other. There was only a slight boom. Then, under the gaze of countless people, Dustless caught the terrifying attack with just one finger. What? This is the Seraph of the End? His strength is too weak. I was looking forward to it. Noticing that there was no reaction from his hand, not even a trace of pain, Dustless said disappointedly. You have such a strong momentum, but the power is so weak. The so-called thunder is loud but the rain is small. Is it referring to people like you? This is a real monster. Seeing this scene, the surrounding ghost army soldiers were shocked. They looked at Dustless in horror. Was that finger made of steel? No, logically speaking, even if it was made of steel, it should be broken into two pieces in the face of Yuichiro's ferocious attack, right? However, Dustless stopped the invincible blade with just one finger. It gave people the illusion that he caught a child's fist with his bare hand. It was effortless. Gulp. Heine's Hongren, who knew the inside story, almost bit her tongue off when she saw Dustless stopping the berserk Yuichiro's attack with just one finger. She was different from the Twilight people. She knew what Yuichiro's current state meant. He could even kill a noble vampire easily. The powerful attack of such a ferocious monster was blocked by a single finger. Was this a dream? Everyone felt like they were dreaming. Berserk Yuichiro also felt a great sense of humiliation. He immediately roared towards the sky, and the baleful aura around him increased to a terrifying level. The strangest thing was that some white crystals flowed out from Yuichiro's body. What is this? Everyone was stunned. They looked at the floating crystals in the sky and couldn't help but grab them out of curiosity. They subconsciously put them into their mouths and tasted a bitter and salty taste. It looks like the king of salt. Dustless was surprised. Looking at Yuichiro, he guessed that this kid was really angry. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2388. Dustless's expression didn't change in the face of Yuichiro's powerful outburst. He looked up at the vast sky. Because of the raging granular crystals, the blue sky was white as if it was snowing. What's going on? Many people cried out in surprise. They were shocked to find that after their bodies came into contact with these granules, they actually began to turn into salt. Their flesh and blood began to rapidly collapse, turning into sparkling salt. Ayo. Another wave of heart-wrenching cries rang out, deafening. Some of the weaker people were even shaken to the point of bleeding from their eardrums. Originally, I didn't want to be enemies with that guy. But now, it seems that the situation is irreversible. Since he's already gone berserk, then I'll ruthlessly trample on Dustless. Ike's Hanren was no pushover. Since she had already offended Dustless, she might as well go all out. She did not care about it anyway. Lord Twilight, I've discovered the reaction of Seraph of Termination. At the critical moment, Sangong Kuei suddenly trotted over. Her words struck Ji Mu as if he was struck by lightning. He was charred on the inside and tender on the outside. He was dumbstruck. Terminating Seraph reaction? What kind of joke was this? Could it be that someone was even more advanced in their research than us? You even succeeded? Dusk felt as if his brain had short-circuited. His blazing end angel was about to succeed, but in the end, it was still a distance away. Now that someone had succeeded in advance, how could he remain calm? Damn Red Lotus, it's him, it must be that bastard. That Hyakuya Yuichiro is his subordinate, and he was the one who guided him to join the Moon Ghost clan. Red Lotus will never be able to clear her name. The Dusk man's face turned green. He felt like he was working with a hungry wolf. Those sharp claws could not only hurt the enemy, but they could also tear him apart. Lord Mu Ren, what should we do? The Three Palace Kuei was Mu Ren's trusted aide. Watch this. The dusky man's face was ugly. His face was almost purple, and it could be seen how bad his mood was. In fact, it was worth mentioning that the people of Toru Twilight didn't know what to do. The raging Yuichiro couldn't fight back at all. So even if he was full of anger, he couldn't vent it. He could only hold it in. His handsome face was red with anger. The Seraph of the End, this was completely beyond his understanding. The Twilight people's plan was still in progress. How could they fight against Dustless and Hyakuya Yuichiro? He simply did not have the capital to do so, so he could only watch helplessly. Creak, creak. The sound of his teeth clenching caused people to shudder. Even their bodies felt cold. When they looked up, they saw that there were traces of blood flowing out from Yuichiro's red eyes. Combined with his twisted and hideous face, it made him look even more sinister and terrifying. The most disgusting thing was that there were traces of saliva drooling. Awo. In the end, with a loud bang, a violent impact swept out. In an instant, it was as if a violent sandstorm had swept up. Wild winds danced and raged in the sky, mixed with a large amount of sand, so much so that everyone had to close their eyes. Ayaya, hurry up and come over. Dustless acted as if nothing had happened. He provoked in a bored manner. I am used to being arrogant. I just want to be beaten up. Hurry up and beat me up. You, Sui Xiaoya and the others were speechless. This guy was really asking for a beating. Oh, such arrogance seemed to have really angered Yuichiro. He suddenly condensed a white long spear in his hand. Many white particles dripped down. And when they landed on the ground, the stones turned into white pillars of salt. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Yuichiro took a step forward, passing through layers of space. The cold light contained in the spear pierced straight towards Dustless's head. Poochie. Dustless didn't dodge, and his head suddenly exploded. But what was strange was that when a human head exploded, it should spurt out blood, but when Dustless's head was pierced, it spurted out golden light. Is that all? Come on, show me your full strength. Otherwise, when I decide to make my move, you won't have the chance to play anymore. Even though Dustless's head was destroyed and disappeared, his mocking voice still spread out in the boundless void. What's going on? Is he killed? The members of the Emperor Ghost Army were stunned. It was said that vampires were monsters that couldn't be killed, but Dustless seemed to be even more mysterious and unfathomable than those vampires. Is this guy still human? Not to mention the others. Even Ise's Hanrei and Ji Murin were looking at Dustless in disbelief. Dustless's body was still standing tall and straight like MT Tai. It was as if nothing could shake his tall and straight posture. Everyone couldn't help but respect him. Awo, awo, awo. Hayakuya Yuichiro screamed crazily a few more times. Once again he lunged his spear at Wu Chen's head. Poochie, Poochie, Poochie. In just a few seconds, Wu Chen's body was full of holes. His abdomen was full of holes. But what made people stunned was that even though there were wounds all over his body, Wu Chen still stood there as if nothing had happened. The most shocking thing was that Dustless was still singing a pleasant song. Boom, boom, boom. Hayakuya Yuichiro was also crazily stabbing Dustless's body. There were more and more holes, but he still couldn't shake Dustless. Looks like you're at the end of the road. It's time to end this impromptu party. Dustless's broken body suddenly shone brightly, and his body was like a blazing sun. The holes in his body were repaired in the blink of an eye, and he returned to his original state. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus update, 3,000 gifts plus update, 1,000 comments plus update, 500 automatic subscriptions plus update. Chapter 2389. Monster, Monster, Monster. Seeing that Dustless had recovered in the blink of an eye, everyone started to curse. This was too much. Vampires died after being stabbed by a ghost curse weapon. Yuichiro was stabbed by a blade. Needless to say, even if he didn't die, he would still be injured. However, Dustless was beaten into a beehive. In the end, he was safe and sound. His white face was filled with vitality. This was too much of a blow. Ah! Yuichiro, who had gone berserk, seemed to be frightened. He roared at Dustless angrily, as if venting his unwillingness and hostility. Brat, what are you unhappy about? Dustless's handsome face suddenly became gloomy. He said in a gloomy tone, in the past years, do you know what I have experienced? My strength has reached this level. Do you think I got it empty-handed? Compared to you who borrowed the strength of others, I have spent hundreds of years to reach this level. Do you know what kind of effort I have put in? Clang, clang, clang. While speaking, Dustless unsheathed the Ajuruamaru in his hand. The slender grass-green blade emitted a cold air. The surrounding air instantly became cold. This saber's power, these few years when Dustless controlled it, its power was unleashed to the extreme by him. Repent. Dustless raised the Ajuruamaru expressionlessly and slashed down. Boom, boom, boom. A huge black slash swept out from the tip of the Ajuruamaru. It split the ground in half and went straight for Yuichiro. Ah! Yuichiro felt a sense of danger. His scarlet eyes flashed with a trace of human-like fear. Perhaps he felt the power of this attack. He subconsciously took a step back. It seems that even the Seraph of Termination can't stop this guy. Ji Murin and Hines Hanren's expression changed greatly. They had overestimated Dustless's strength. They had treated him as a godlike opponent. But now, it seemed that they had greatly underestimated this opponent. The enemy was beyond godlike. Even the Seraph of Termination couldn't handle it. Pucci. The black slash penetrated Yuichiro's body and tore him apart. Although this kid's strength was average, he was able to escape with the wind under his feet. It was as if he was possessed by a god. At the critical moment, he managed to avoid the attack of the black energy tide. But even so, Yuichiro was still seriously injured. The black branches on his back were all broken. The moment the slash hit him, it turned into thousands of sharp blades that washed over his body. His whole body was riddled with holes, and there were horrifying wounds all over. You're really lucky. Dustless was amazed, looking at Yuichiro's eyes full of ridicule. It turns out that a beast that has lost its consciousness, in the face of life and death, will also be afraid. Immediately after, Dustless took a step forward. Swish. Swish. This step was not a big deal, but Yuichiro, who felt Dustless's strength, took a few steps back and looked at him cautiously. The Seraph of Termination. Is he afraid of Dustless? Case Hongren clenched her fists. She didn't know when, but sweat had already soaked her clothes. Today's battle had refreshed her knowledge. The Seraph of Termination was not invincible. She didn't know that humans could be so crazy that they could crush the Seraph of Termination. Even though Yuichiro was still stubbornly resisting, every time Dustless took a step forward, he would take a few steps back. The outcome of this battle was already clear. Do you think you can run? Dustless suddenly turned his hand. Boundless gravitational force and eye power were unleashed to the maximum. 10,000 heavenly attraction. A pitch-black hole appeared on Dustless's right hand, erupting with an irresistible gravitational force. Everything in the world would be forcibly pulled over by him. Hyakuya Yuichiro, who was constantly retreating, suddenly lost control of his body. Like a kite with a broken string, he flew towards Dustless. In the face of gravitational force, no one could resist it, let alone Yuichiro. In front of such a powerful force, he was just a lonely boat in the vast ocean. It was unrealistic for him to resist. Die. Looking at Yuichiro, who was flying towards him, Dustless smirked. He didn't hide his bloodthirsty killing intent anymore. He raised his hand and slashed down mercilessly at the kid. In the past, he let Yuichiro live because he wanted to see the power of the Seraph of Termination, but the result was barely satisfactory. Since that was the case, what value did he have? Hyakuya Yuichiro can go and die. Pucci. A cold light cut through Yuichiro's body. A ghastly wound appeared from his chest to his abdomen. His flesh was torn open and blood flowed out non-stop. One could even see the organs hidden in the wound. Even the bright red heart could be vaguely seen. This slash almost split Yuichiro into two halves. Yuichiro. Seeing Yuichiro in such a terrible state, Jun Tsukasa and Zioinu's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. They glared at Dustless and cursed. Why did you attack Yuichiro, you bastard? He is also part of the Emperor Ghost Army. He is our comrade. What does it have to do with me? Wu Chen glanced at the two of them casually and replied in an indifferent tone. From the moment he waved his sword at me, his fate was already sealed. I'm a narrow-minded person. When someone provokes me, I want to crush his body without hesitation. I don't have the so-called mentality of a powerhouse. Dustless would take revenge. This was the true portrayal of Dustless. Jun Tsukasa was furious. His hands were trembling and he couldn't help but grab the twin blades. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2390. Don't be rash. Instead, it was the timid Zoyinu who stopped Junyu Shifeng. She pointed at Hyakuya Yuichiro and said sorrowfully, even in that state, Yuichiro wasn't Wu Chen's opponent, let alone you? Bear with it for a while. You still have a sister to take care of. Jun Mochizuki, you don't want her to live alone in this world, right? Needless to say, Zhao Nu and Yi's persuasion was unexpectedly effective. Moon Monarch Jun glared at Dustless unhappily, then closed his eyes in despair. He was a person who understood when to advance and when to retreat. Don't worry. When I have nothing to worry about, I will avenge you. Jun Mochizuki swore to himself as he looked at Hyakuya Yuichiro's corpse. He had to admit that compared to Dustless, he was too inexperienced. He was like a child who had not grown up. Dustless did not even need to personally make a move. With a light wave of his hand, there would be countless lackeys who wanted to rely on Dustless to crush him to death. For example, Jun Tianli. Dustless only needed to make a sound and Jun Yu Shifeng would die without a complete corpse. You're quite good at enduring. Wu Chen glanced at Moon Gentleman and said faintly, young people should be like this. It's best to know when to yield and when to stand tall. As the saying goes, it's easy to break when you're too strong. Especially in front of me, everything is easy to break. So there's nothing bad about obediently lying on the ground. Look, what's going on with that guy? Why are his fingers moving? Isn't he dead? At this moment, many of the sharp-eyed King Ghost Army soldiers cried out. They were shocked to find that Hyakuya Yuichiro, whose heart had been destroyed, was moving his fingers again. I knew it. He can't be killed so easily. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to destroy the world. Seeing this scene, Ike's Hongren smiled gently. Her heavy heart finally felt a little more comforted. Hyakuya Yuichiro was his biggest backer. Now that his backer was dead, he no longer had any capital to continue playing in this world. When that time comes, he would be a loser. He can be resurrected? Even the knowledgeable Sui Xiaoya could not help but widen her eyes. The shock on her face was clearly visible. Surprised? Dustless pursed his lips and smiled gently. His eyes were as calm as an ancient well, like still water. His calm gaze was unusually calm, as if he had already expected this outcome. After all, they are the seraph of the end. They seem to be the playthings of God. If Yuichiro Hyakuya wants to die, those angels won't let him die. Dustless said in an understatement. In the original work, there seemed to be a similar situation. Yuichiro Hyakuya, who was supposed to be dead, suddenly came back to life. The reason was that the angels didn't allow him to die, and then he was awakened by Ajiramaru. Now it seemed that they had achieved the same result through different means. Then aren't you going to finish him off? This guy coming back from the dead is a huge threat to you, right? 3 Palaces and 3 Leaves suddenly ran over and said with admiration, I am your fan. If you let me do it, I will definitely kill this guy. No way, am I really that charming? Staring at 3 Palaces and 3 Leaves who were almost infatuated with him, Dustless rubbed the girl's head and asked, you heard just now, right? This guy is our companion, and also part of the Emperor Ghost Army. If you kill him, aren't you afraid of being punished? Humph, what's so great about that? Unexpectedly, 3 Palaces and 3 Leaves just snorted disdainfully. Her eyes were shining as she looked at Dustless as if she had seen delicious food. She licked her thin lips and said with a smile, you are the general of the Emperor Ghost Army. If Lord Dustless says a word, I will be fine. Dustless was speechless when he heard this. Were the girls nowadays so cunning? So she had such a plan. I appreciate your kindness. Unexpectedly, Dustless just waved his hand gently, and his face suddenly became cold. Do you think it is a good thing that the guy is alive? 3-Leaf-chan, you are too narrow-minded. Don't forget, this is a cruel world where humans eat humans. But vampires are the biggest enemy of humans. Remember, humans eat humans too. Humans eat humans too? Hearing Dustless's words, 3 Palaces and 3 Leaves were obviously stunned. She looked at Dustless with empty eyes, not understanding what he meant. Could it be? But soon Xiaoya's beautiful eyes flashed. She subconsciously looked at the Twilight Commander, and suddenly understood something. All troops attack. Capture Hyakuya Yuichiro. Kill anyone who blocks the way. The Twilight Commander's cold voice suddenly sounded. Turning around, He came with a large number of Emperor Ghost Army and surrounded Hyakuya Yuichiro. See, I don't need to say anything. The people who will clean up the mess are here. Dustless said leisurely. Of course, he understood the Twilight Commander's plan and purpose. How could such a powerful weapon fall into the hands of others? He must control it. In addition, the Twilight Commander had other ideas. Wouldn't Hyakuya Yuichiro be the best test subject? Thinking of this, the Twilight Commander's heart suddenly became clear as if he had eaten honey. Ha 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 ha. The world is in front of us. It was as if he could see the invincible stance of sweeping through the world in the future. The people of the Twilight tribe couldn't help but burst out laughing. Soon Xiaoya saw this scene, but her beautiful eyes dimmed. The Sun family was such a cold family. There was only scheming and power. This is getting more and more interesting. You two slowly bite each other. There is still a long time. Don't bite each other to death in a hurry. It won't be nice. Dustless smiled but didn't say anything. Hyakuya Yuichiro was the trump card of Ike's Akatsuki. How could she swallow it when he was snatched away? Obviously not. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus update, 3,000 gifts plus update, 1,000 comments plus update, 500 automatic subscriptions plus update. Chapter 2391. Losing Hyakuya Yuichiro would be a huge loss for Ike's Red Lotus. After all, he was her only trump card. It was too important and had an extraordinary significance. Let's go back. After the matter was settled, Dustless turned around and left leisurely. The Emperor Ghost Army also retreated. Even Mumu, his archenemy, was like a rat crossing the street, decisively hiding. This kid had been tricked by Dustless many times and had become much smarter. Right, don't go out casually for the time being. The storm is coming. Staring at the distant horizon, Wuchen said frankly and confidently. Then, his body gradually faded and his back gradually disappeared from everyone's sight. Understood. Sasuke, Xiaoya, Mia, and Mia glanced at each other and didn't ask anything. They only nodded slightly. Night fell, and the sky gradually darkened. A bone-chilling wind swept across the vast land, blowing sand everywhere. It was so strong that people couldn't open their eyes. One could also faintly hear ghostly cries and howls. It was especially oppressive. This city that had been through countless wars had been wiped out by the flames of war. Ever since the destruction of mankind, no one cared about it for a long time. After going through all kinds of hardships, it still managed to hold on until now. However, it was greatly different recently. Ghostly cries and howls could be heard from time to time, as if it had really reached the end of its road. Xiao xiao xiao. The night was dark and the wind was strong. It was the time for murder and arson. A black shadow shuttled through the night. This person's body was emitting a clear cold light. His body was as light as a cicada's wings. He quietly moved forward in the dark without making any movements. Plop! When this black shadow landed, it was like a dragonfly skimming the surface of the water. There was no trace of water on his clothes. He was as elegant as the wind and abnormally vigorous. Yuichiro, I'll definitely avenge you. This black figure had a head of golden hair, and under the hazy moonlight, its beautiful azure eyes were even more dazzling as gemstones. Looking carefully, this person was actually Hyakuya Michael. Hearing that Hyakuya Yuichiro was heavily injured by Dustless and had entered the realm of life and death, Hyakuya Michael was furious. He immediately rushed over without caring about anything. His destination was Dustless's temporary residence. He wanted him to pay back 100-fold. Really, what is the meaning of this? Inside the dimly lit tent, this was where Dustless temporarily rested. Although it was very simple, as the only general of the Emperor Ghost Army, the treatment that Dustless enjoyed was naturally not something that others could enjoy. It was very complete. However, what made him speechless was that just as he was about to fall asleep, two uninvited guests came. Yin Xiaoya and the 3 palaces and 3 leaves. You're not young anymore. Why are you still sleeping with me? Dustless was also speechless. Were these 2 little girls stupid? Didn't they know that men and women shouldn't touch each other? If we don't care, why do you care? A frivolous expression appeared on Chuang Xiaoya's face as she said disapprovingly, "Could it be that you still think we would molest you?" That's right, that's right. He's too stingy. No matter what, he's still a general of the Imperial Ghost Army. What's more, I'm your cute fan. Do you want your hardcore fan to sleep on the streets? Be careful or I'll expose you." The three palaces and three leaves nodded their chins forcefully. Their tone was coquettish and soft, more like they were acting coquettishly. Chuang Xiaoya didn't even wait for Dustless to speak. She directly took off her shoes, and even unbuttoned her clothes. "We're about to go to war with the vampires. It's not safe outside, but it's very safe here. The Golden Reaper, this nickname is feared by all vampires. It's okay for the two of us to freeload for one night. It seems that after the extinction of mankind, human ethics and morality have also collapsed. Girls nowadays don't care about their identity and influence at all." Dustless rolled his eyes. There was only one bed here. Although it was big enough for a few people to sleep, they could only sleep together, so Dustless felt awkward. Quickly find them for me. They definitely haven't gone far. If we can't find those two people, we'll be finished. Outside the tent, there were suddenly chaotic shouts. Groups of the Imperial Ghost Army were searching for something. They didn't let go of anyone's tent, except for Dustless's. It was a restricted area. No one dared to set foot in it, so it was unusually peaceful. Could it be? Suddenly narrowing his eyes, Dustless suddenly thought of something. He looked at Chuang Xiaoya with a smile. "Little girl, you're not obedient at all. How dare you plot against me?" "Plot against you? How is that possible? I don't have the guts." Chuang Xiaoya immediately denied it, but her small fists were clenched tightly, and her eyes were flickering. It seemed that she was a little guilty. "You're wanted, right?" Looking at the two of them carefully, Dustless suddenly said, "To be able to mobilize so many Imperial Ghost Army, you're obviously not a small character. If I'm not wrong, the person who's wanted is that kid from the Twilight Tribe, right?" Chuang Xiaoya didn't say anything, but a dim light flashed in her eyes. Dustless's guess was not far from the truth. "Sometimes I really hate the Shi family." After a while, Chuang Xiaoya suddenly spoke. Her beautiful eyes were filled with coldness. When she mentioned the Shi family, her words were full of hatred and disgust. She didn't have the slightest good impression of this family. Those who were useful to them would be treasured, and those who were no longer useful would be abandoned. Indeed, being born into such a family, outsiders may think that there's limitless glory, but in fact, everyone has their own difficulties. It's just that no one knows or understands. Dustless didn't deny it. He and Shi Tianli were old acquaintances. He knew this guy's character. The so-called children were sometimes more like props. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2392. However, even though Ji Tianli was cold and heartless, he was still slightly more humane than Ji Mu. At the very least, he wouldn't kill Ji Xiaoya. After all, she was his daughter. However, Ji Mu was different. This guy even wanted to kill his father, let alone Ji Xiaoya. "Tell me the reason." Pointing at two stools, Dustless gestured for the two to sit down. He said calmly, "You two can rest assured. That brat Ji Mu wouldn't dare to barge in even if he had the courage of a bear or a leopard. He doesn't want to die early." It wasn't that Ji Mu was afraid of Dustless's military rank. Even though he was a general, Ji Mu was used to being lawless. He wasn't afraid of a mere military rank. What made him afraid was Dustless's unfathomable strength. He had also provoked Dustless before. Sadly, he was crushed every time and lost all his face. At first glance, Ji Mu had an unprecedented fear of Dustless, so much so that he didn't dare to act rashly. "I don't know either." Ji Xiaoya shook her head bitterly. "Everyone related to Hayakuya Yuichiro has been arrested. The two of us were lucky to escape. As for the others, I don't know." Other than Ji Xiaoya and Sangong, there was also Junyu Shifang and Zhao Yinu who were wanted. The two of them didn't know their whereabouts. "Is that so?" Dustless nodded thoughtfully. He stared at the two of them for a moment before sighing helplessly. Xiaoya, I even hugged you when you were young. I also have a few years of friendship with your father, that old monster. Even if I don't give face to the monk, there's no harm in saving you once. As for you, Dustless looked at Sangong and Sanyi. His eyes flickered. No one knew what he was thinking. Gulp. However, the 3 palaces and 3 leaves were very nervous. They rolled their eyes and hurriedly stood up and said, I am your loyal fan. You can't be so heartless. Besides, protecting me is insignificant to you. Disappear. What else can I say when you say that? Dustless shrugged. However, if the 2 of you want to sleep in the same bed as me, I don't mind. I won't lose out anyway. Since the others didn't care, what else could Dustless say? Phew. What is this? It's not worth mentioning. The 2 women looked at each other and didn't care about this. In this world where order had collapsed, being able to live was already hard to come by. Why would they care about these details? The 2 of you should wash up and go to bed. After saying this, Dustless walked out of the tent. There were Emperor Ghost soldiers all around him, and all of them had ferocious expressions as they searched everyone's tents. However, when they saw Dustless, they immediately fled. Before this, the people of Dusk had ordered them to run for their lives if they encountered Dustless. This guy was too dangerous. Seriously, why am I scarier than a vampire? Seeing this scene, Dustless rolled his eyes and didn't stop them. This was a good thing. No one would disturb him, and he wouldn't be annoyed. It took a while for the 2 women to wash up, so Dustless left alone. As for his own tent, there was nothing to worry about. Even if he gave the people of Dusk and his men 10 lives, they wouldn't dare to break in at will. He knew what the consequences were. Whoosh! Under the night sky, the stars twinkled, and looking at the sky, the moonlight was beautiful. The only flaw was that the environment was a bit desolate. Sitting alone in the ruins, Dustless's eyes were hollow. That guy, when is Saito coming? Dustless bowed his head and sighed. His words were full of impatience. He knew that Saito was a scheming person. It was really difficult to lure him out. Suddenly feeling a chill locking on him, Dustless frowned and turned his head to look. Then his observation hockey spread out, and the wind and grass within a few hundred meters were all seen. Yo, why are you not afraid of death? Are you itching for a fight again? Wuchen rubbed his head speechlessly. He raised his eyes and looked into the distance, looking at the creeping black figure. You brat, are you here to be beaten? No, you're here to die, right? Even in the dark night, Dustless saw the identity of this person. 100 Knights Michael. Well, it's best if you are willing to come out and die alone. Being exposed by Dustless, 100 Knights Michael was no longer pretentious and didn't bother to hide. He jumped out directly from the dark ruins, holding his sword tightly in both hands and locking on Dustless. His eagle-like eyes were dotted with a dangerous chill, and the threatening sight made people afraid to look at him. It was extremely dangerous. Your eyes are good. No wonder you dare to retaliate against me. It turns out that your strength is not strong. Dustless nodded slightly. Even if he didn't fight for the time being, he could see from his eyes that the firm and beautiful eyes were more determined than before, without the slightest fear. But with all due respect, I have never been a good talker. You are still here to die. Dustless said straightforwardly, and his contemptuous eyes were full of contempt. It's you who deserves to die. 100 Knights Michael's eyes shot a fierce light, and his feet stepped on the ground forcefully, turning into a streamer moving forward. It was difficult for ordinary human eyes to catch him. Since he dared to provoke Dustless, 100 Knights Michael naturally had enough confidence. Or at least a little confidence, otherwise he wouldn't have come to die. Be sure to kill this guy. I can't let him continue to bully him. 100 Knights Michael secretly swore in his heart, and the big sword shrouded in cold light slashed towards Dustless's head. Buzz buzz buzz. It was also at this moment that countless ripples appeared in the void, as if a door had been opened, and countless divine weapons shot out from it. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus update, 3,000 gifts plus update, 1,000 comments plus update, 500 automatic subscriptions plus update. Chapter 2393. The night sky was slightly cold with stars twinkling in the sky. The night breeze blew quietly. It was not that cold, but for some reason, the atmosphere was chilling as if something bad was about to happen. What the hell is this? The young man raised his eyes and looked at the sky not far away. He could not help but be stunned. His tone was filled with shock and astonishment. In the sky above Wuxia's head, rays of light flickered. The whole world had entered into the night. Only this place was different. Groups of rays of light were pulsating, as if thousands of fireflies were shining at the same time. The bright brilliance made people a little dazed. Dustless looked even more sacred and inviolable under the light. This is called the king's treasure. Dustless raised his slender finger and pointed above his head. He sat on a rock lazily and held his chin with his right hand. He explained with a smile. Are you surprised? A mere human with such extraordinary strength. So you find it hard to accept, right? Hearing this, Yuichiro Hayakuya was silent. His scarlet eyes were focused on Dustless. Although he did not say anything, his pale face showed how terrible he was. Dustless's ability was really strange and unpredictable. It was even more difficult to understand. Looking around, the sky above Wuxia's head seemed to have opened up another space. Various kinds of divine weapons emerged one after another, filled with sharp cold light. Every weapon could easily destroy Yuichiro Hayakuya. The most unacceptable thing was that there were more than one or two of these divine weapons. They almost filled the sky. Slowly feel despair. Dustless raised his hand and waved it down. All kinds of weapons in the sky suddenly went berserk and poured down like a storm towards Yuichiro Hayakuya. This damn monster. I don't know where he got his strange moves. I have never heard of them before. The key is that there are too many of them. 100 Knights. Michael cursed loudly. With endless anger, he locked onto the various weapons that were shooting over. They were like a swarm of golden locusts. How could he block them? Helplessly, the 100 Knights. Michael glared at Dustless ferociously and retreated unwillingly. Clang, clang, clang. The densely packed weapons all missed, and the ground was instantly pierced into a hornet's nest. Even the sturdy rocks could not withstand the destruction of these sharp weapons, and were dismembered and cracked open. It's not an illusion. 100 Knights. Michael, who had retreated to the side, widened his eyes. The large amount of powder that was produced after the rock was crushed blew onto his face. At first, he naively thought that this was an illusion. Still want to run? Dustless shook her head in disdain and waved her hand again. Swish. Swish. All kinds of weapons floating above Yuichiro's head once again pierced through the void. Like a torrential downpour, they pounced on Yuichiro with unstoppable momentum. Oh no! Yuichiro Hayakuya's pupils suddenly constricted as he sensed an unprecedented sense of danger. Without any hesitation, he immediately retreated. Yuichiro Hayakuya's limbs and bones were instantly pierced by all kinds of sharp weapons, leaving behind horrifying bloody holes the size of bowls. Blood instantly gushed out. Gotcha! Following an ear-piercing sound, Yuichiro's face instantly turned ferocious, and the pain caused his entire face to twitch non-stop. Imagine how horrifying it would be to be pierced by hundreds of weapons, and have one's body riddled with holes like a beehive. At this moment, the damaged skin began to heal slowly. Although these weapons were powerful, they were not curse weapons, so they could not kill Yuichiro Hayakuya. But in fact, having an immortal body and eternal youth wasn't a good thing sometimes, such as this special situation. As the weapons were pierced into his body and he couldn't pull them out, his limbs were nailed and couldn't move at all. Although his wounds had healed, they were still difficult to heal completely. The various weapons occupied his wounds and tortured him to the point that his handsome face looked as though he was possessed by a devil. "Ah, I'm really sorry for not holding back," Dustless said with an apologetic tone. But his face was filled with a mocking smile. "But your twisted face is really pleasing to the eye. Kill me if you dare." Yuichiro Hayakuya yelled angrily. His deafening roar was like an enraged tiger that was overflowing with anger. "Brat!" Dustless suddenly flashed and instantly appeared beside Yuichiro Hayakuya. Yuichiro Hayakuya didn't even have time to react as he swung his sword and thrust it forward. Puffed! A cold light flashed by and severed Yuichiro Hayakuya's neck. A fountain of blood instantly spurted out from his severed neck. But even so, Yuichiro Hayakuya was still alive due to the vampire's strong physique. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus updates, 3,000 gifts plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Oh. Chapter 2394. Sometimes living meant more pain. Drip, 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 scarlet blood kept dripping, dyeing the ground into blood-colored plum blossoms. Yuichiro Hayakuya's body was stabbed with all kinds of sharp weapons. In a short period of time, all the blood in his body was drained. His huge body was left with a shriveled body. It was extremely terrifying. Awoo awoo. Even so, Yuichiro Hayakuya's madness didn't diminish. He gritted his teeth and let out a strange sound. It was as though he would only be satisfied after tearing Dustless into pieces. Are you still not satisfied? Dustless lowered his head to examine the ferocious youth. His bored expression relaxed slightly as the corners of his mouth curled up slightly, revealing a smirk that was filled with interest. I like to treat those arrogant people, such as people like you who are unafraid of death. Dustless's mouth, which was redder than a woman's, opened slightly and said, Do you know? There's no pleasure in using force to trample on a person's heart. However, shattering their inner perseverance is the greatest pleasure. Towards the end, Dustless's pale lips once again hung a smile. It was a flirtatious smile that left one in a daze. However, when it landed in Yuichiro Hayakuya's eyes, his heart immediately turned heavy. Brat, look into my eyes. Dustless's ethereal voice invaded the earpiece once again. Upon hearing this, Yuichiro Hayakuya immediately cast his gaze over. His gorgeous gem-like eyes reflected a pair of extremely ominous eyes. The demonic eyes emitted a dark red color, filled with all kinds of ominous negative emotions. Dustless only looked at Yuichiro Hayakuya quietly, but for some reason, he felt a sense of panic. It was even worse than killing him. Buzz, buzz, buzz. In his eye sockets, ripples splashed out like water ripples. They were untraceable and extremely weak, to the point of being negligible. However, it was also this fleeting glance that caused Yuichiro Hayakuya's deep eyes to turn empty. They lost their previous brightness and turned gray. It was as though his consciousness had been devoured by some monster, leaving him in a daze. Tsukuyami. These two cryptic words shattered Yuichiro Hayakuya's consciousness. With a plop sound, he fell to the ground, and then his thoughts were pulled into another world of dead silence. Where is this? Yuichiro's face suddenly shrank. After seeing this strange world, his expression suddenly changed. There was an intense uneasiness, and he felt an unprecedented fear. This desolate world was deathly silent, making people feel oppressed. Looking around within a radius of 1,000 meters, it was a land of death. There were no signs of life. What surprised Yuichiro the most was that he was currently tied to the cross, and all the serious injuries on his body had disappeared. He was safe and sound. How could he not be surprised that he had recovered after being stabbed with over 100 weapons? Could this be the underworld? Yuichiro Hayakuya muttered to himself. He felt a chill down his spine, especially when he saw the scarlet cross on his back. It seemed to have devoured many lives, which made him feel deeply uneasy and irritated. No matter what kind of creature it was, they would always be fearful of the unknown. Tsk tisk thank me. Dustless's ghostly voice suddenly sounded with a teasing tone. Of course, healing you is only to make it easier for me to torture you. It won't be fun if you die midway. After all, you are a tool for me to amuse myself. As soon as he said that, the faint smile on Dustless's lips turned even more terrifying. It made one shudder. What are you trying to do? Staring at the strange Dustless, Michael's firm heart was in chaos. Although it wasn't to the extent of collapsing, it was already wavering. In such a strange world, Dustless walked through the air step by step. He was like a high and mighty god. His indifferent and dominating eyes made people's willpower slowly disintegrate. It's very simple. Dustless took a step forward hundreds of meters, and instantly appeared in front of Michael. He held a sharp dagger in his hand and stabbed it into Michael's abdomen. Uffed! His body, which was in perfect condition, was immediately torn apart. With a kacha sound, even his bones were crushed. The horrifying bloody hole made one's scalp tingle. Ah! You bastard, kill me if you have the guts. This stab seemed to have really hurt Michael. He roared madly at Dustless like an exposed lion with his golden hair fluttering wildly. Ah, how scary. Dustless smiled faintly. Immediately after, he lifted the dagger and stabbed again. Puffed! Another bloody hole appeared in Michael's abdomen. He was in so much pain that he almost crushed his teeth. His ferocious gaze locked onto Dustless as though it was the only way to reduce the pain. Don't be anxious. Take your time. The instant Dustless's calm voice sounded, Michael's body recovered once again. It was as though everything that happened just now was just an illusion. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2395. Dustless's elegant and handsome face was filled with indifference, and his eyes were tranquil and serene. Upon hearing Michael's horrifying screams, he didn't feel the slightest bit of discomfort. Instead, he was very relaxed. Those who didn't know would think that his humanity had been obliterated. Even vampires would have a drastic change in expression upon hearing his painful screams. Killing you would be letting you off too easily. Although it's best that I kill you, the feeling of making you regret living in this world has only just begun. You need to slowly experience it. I will try my best to be gentle and not let you die too early. Dustless blurted out such horrifying words in a casual manner, making one feel uncomfortable all over. Slowly experience it. I'm about to begin, Dustless said indifferently, and immediately after, he exited the Tsukuyomi world. The moment he retreated, countless figures with swords appeared, and began to carry out all sorts of cruel punishments on 100 Knights Mygar. His body was continuously pierced, and there were terrifying knife wounds everywhere. 100 Knights Michael's miserable cries did not stop, and this scene would continue for 24 hours. Life is really as lonely as snow. In the outside world, Dustless looked up at the bright night sky and couldn't help but shake his head gently. He finally understood the meaning of being too high and lonely. Sometimes being too invincible was also a kind of loneliness, and sweeping the world was also a kind of helplessness. At the same time, Michael also regained consciousness. His face was as pale as a sheet of paper. He looked up at Dustless a few times, and then a mouthful of scarlet blood burst out of his mouth as though his soul had been sucked out. His complexion became even more dispirited, and he was so weak that he looked like a bag of bones. TSK, you're already in this state, yet you're still alive. Kid, your perseverance isn't bad. You can take a beating. After taking a few more glances at Michael, Dustless revealed a smile on his face. The golden-haired youth didn't say anything. His cold eyes were embellished with a cold light, and his oily green eyes made people shudder. Upon closer inspection, his entire body was riddled with holes. There were bloody holes everywhere, and his skin and flesh were lacerated. Although he had just been repaired, that was only in the Tsukuyomi world. It was ultimately a dream. Even after 24 hours, the injuries in the real world still couldn't be repaired. I'm really curious. What kind of trend has made you persist until now? Dustless looked at Hyakuya Michael with interest, then he smiled and said, Is it because of that kid? I mean Hyakuya Yuichiro. If I kill him, you won't be willing to die. After all, you still have to take revenge. You dare to have ideas about Jewel, I will definitely tear you into pieces. These few words touched 100 Knights Michael's bottom line, and he immediately roared with a sinister expression. Idiot. The corner of Dustless's mouth raised slightly, and a smile bloomed. His words were full of contempt and disdain. You are just a lab rat, yet you still want to open your mouth and ask for happiness. Don't you think your hope is too slim? A person's life is like a flash in the pan, only a few decades. Although you are a vampire and your life is relatively longer. But who asked you to be unlucky and meet me in the end? TSK, You are really unlucky. However, I am a kind person. In order to let you know the meaning of your death, I might as well tell you the meaning of your and Hayakuya Yuichiro's life. As if he was really interested, Dustless showed a rare serious face, and it was quite serious. What do you mean? Tell me clearly. Hayakuya Yuichiro's eyes were sunken, and all the blood in his body flowed out. His body was shriveled. Vampires were a rather special race. In the case of extreme blood loss, although they wouldn't die, they would degenerate into ghosts. You don't even know this? I thought you would have improved a little after following Freed for a few years, but the result is disappointing. Dustless lowered his gaze slightly, and Hayakuya Yuichiro entered his sight. He was in a very bad state, and his spirit was extremely weak. You and Hayakuya Yuichiro are both experimental subjects for the En's Blazing Angel. The only difference is that Hayakuya Yuichiro is very successful, but you seem to be a failure. Dustless said casually. The reason why I kept you alive is because I wanted to see how powerful the En's Blazing Angel is. Speaking until here, Dustless couldn't help but shake his head. Unfortunately, I had a strong interest in that thing at the beginning, but after witnessing Hayakuya Yuichiro's strength after going berserk, to be honest, I have completely lost interest in you. You bastard. Hearing this, Hayakuya Michael glared at Dustless, and his eyes were spitting fire. He wanted to melt Dustless. Still staring at me? If you want to die so much, then I will fulfill your wish. Dustless's pupils suddenly blinked, and the seemingly casual energy ripples splashed gently, but Hayakuya Michael was instantly in big trouble. Kamui. The void around Mikao was distorted, and many holes appeared. These were all distorted by the Sharingan. In the blink of an eye, Mikao's body was devoured, and his body was torn beyond recognition. A good person was torn apart like a piece of cloth. What an eyesore. Dustless looked down at the big pool of blood, and then his eyes blinked again. Amaterasu. A pitch-black fire descended without any warning, swallowing Hayakuya Michael's body fragments like a whale, and instantly turned into ashes. Even the ground was burned by the black flames, and cracks appeared. From now on, it also means that Hayakuya Michael has completely fallen, and not even his corpse was left behind. The method used was extremely cruel, and if Hayakuya Yuichiro knew the truth, he would definitely be angered to death. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2396. After all, Hayakuya Yuichiro and Hayakuya Michael had an extraordinary relationship. If he knew that Hayakuya Michael was chopped into pieces by Dustless, his anger would erupt like a waterfall. Without a doubt, when that happened, Dustless would face the most concentrated hail of bullets. Those two little girls should be done by now. Women are really troublesome. Dustless suddenly raised his head to look at the void. He could not help but shake his head and sigh helplessly. No matter what kind of woman, they would pay great attention to their appearance. When he returned, the 3 palaces, 3 leaves and Sasuke Xiaoya would most likely be gorgeously dressed. What a waste of time. Hand him over. In the deathly silent laboratory, the only sound that could be heard was the voice filled with endless rage. Looking at the source of the voice, who else could it be other than Ike's Hongren? What kind of attitude is this, Hongren? Remember this clearly. You are just the eldest son of a branch family. The Twilight person frowned deeply. At the same time, his tone was extremely unfriendly. You still dare to cause trouble for me? Explain to me where Hayakuya Yuichiro got this monster. Kue detected the reaction of the Seraph of Termination from his body. The Twilight person practically roared out the last sentence. Being deceived by Ike's Hongren, he was especially angry. The two of them were in a cooperative relationship. They researched and developed the Seraph of Termination together. The equipment was Jun Tsukasa's sister. But now, they suddenly detected the reaction of the Seraph of Termination from Hayakuya Yuichiro's body. How could the Twilight person not be angry? It was obvious that Ike's Honglian was toying with him, feigning compliance but opposing him in secret. Cut the crap. Hand him over to me. Ike's Red Lotus said sternly as she glared at the dusk people with a ferocious gaze. Everything could be discussed and everything could be settled from the very beginning. However, this was an exception. Yamatsuya Yuichiro was his only trump card to rise to power. In this chaotic world where order had collapsed, what capital did humans rely on to survive? Other than superior strength, what else did they have? Moreover, Ike's Hongren was an eagle that wanted to soar in the sky. Even if he was not strong enough, he still wanted to fight for hegemony in the blue sky and find a sky that belonged to him. Shut up. However, Jimu clearly had no intention of negotiating. He sneered. Honglian, you still dare to question me? Do you think I don't know what you're thinking? I was wondering why you thought so highly of that brat. So it turns out he's one of the remnants of the 100 Knight Academy. Before the world was destroyed, the 100 Knight Court was Japan's largest incantation organization. Their strength had once suppressed the Imperial Ghost Army, but good times did not last long. In the end they could not escape destruction, and the main culprit was the vampires led by Krulu. Just in case. Heine's Hung Lotus knew that she was in the wrong and her confidence was clearly lacking. Even so, she maintained a solemn expression and emphasized that she was thinking for the future. Bullshit. Who would have thought that Jimu would not appreciate his kindness? He only glared at him and rudely interrupted him. He did not even care about his status as he angrily roared. It is indeed a precaution. However, this precaution is to deal with our G clan. Do you think I don't know what you are thinking? Wasn't it for the sake of fighting for the world in the future? You still have the audacity to say that it was to deal with Dustless. How shameless. Jimu's face was filled with disdain. Heine's Hung Lotus could only stare at him awkwardly. After all, that was indeed his plan. Now that Jimu's plan was exposed, he felt somewhat guilty. Cough cough. Heine's Hung Lotus was also an old fox. Her face was as thick as a wall. The awkwardness only lasted for a moment. Then she said, of course Yuichiro Hayakuya was only a backup plan to deal with Dustless. It was able to catch him off guard. Catch him off guard. Hearing that, Ike's Honglian pursed her lips and chuckled. The look of disdain on her face deepened. That kid did manage to catch them off guard. However, he ended up getting slapped in the face. He ended up being crippled. This sentence sounded quite funny, but the two of them were silent. Their cheeks were tight, and their expressions were solemn and depressed. They really couldn't get excited when talking about this topic. Even if the Twilight people obtained another experimental material of the terminating blazing angel, they still couldn't open their hearts. They were extremely depressed. Even the Seraph of Termination was beaten to a pulp by Dustless. What kind of strength did this brat have? From now on, that Yuichiro Hayakuya belongs to me. After a moment of silence, Jimu's Seraph of Termination said arrogantly. Hearing this, Heine's Hung Lotus fell silent. She lowered her head and looked at Jimu's Seraph of Termination. Then she turned around and left. He understood that his current strength was too weak. No matter if it was his strength or the strength of the Moon Demon Group, it was still the same. There was no room for negotiation with Jimu's Seraph of Termination. Just you wait. I will not give up on that brat so easily. In the dark corridor, Heine's Hung Lotus turned around and subconsciously clenched her fists. Then she left without saying a word. In fact, she felt helpless. She could only blame herself for being too weak. She was far from being as strong as Jimu's Seraph of Termination. Even so, Heine's Hung Lotus would not give up just like that. She had been through a lot. She would not give up because of such a small setback. The night was long and eventually, it was gone forever. The chill and darkness of the morning sun gradually dispersed. The sky was bright and warm. Warm sunlight poured down from the 9 heavens and shone on one's body. Even the cold-blooded vampire narrowed his eyes and enjoyed this scene. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 rating plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Oh. Chapter 2397. The first rays of the morning sun nourished the earth. Under this light, everything was full of vitality. Although it was a cold winter day, it was unexpectedly warm. Swish, swish, swish. A black shadow cut across the earth. The figure was like the wind, and as fast as lightning. Even if it passed by, no one would notice. What about Japan? This land really makes one look forward to it. The black shadow suddenly stopped and stood on the broken ruins. He looked at the distant horizon, his young face showing some nostalgia and longing. This person had a delicate appearance and a faint smile at the corner of his mouth. It wasn't very obvious, but it was definitely a smile. The first impression he gave was that he was unusually gentle and looked harmless. Especially when he was wearing a black suit, he gave off a scholarly aura and seemed very knowledgeable. Freed. How many years has it been since we last met? I really miss you. This person murmured softly. Immediately, an interesting arc appeared at the corner of his mouth. He was probably looking forward to meeting the seventh ancestor, Freed Bartley. Moreover, looking at his interested expression, he was probably an acquaintance. Swish. Swish. After standing there for a while, the black shadow turned into a flash of lightning and left. In this world, not many people knew this person. Those who knew his identity didn't even know. Even if they really knew, it was probably those old antiques who had lived for thousands of years. About a few thousand years ago, when this person was still a vampire, he had an illustrious identity. Even the third ancestor, Krulutsipizi, could only look up to him. His status was far higher than Krulu's. His identity was the second ancestor, Chitung. Saito, this was definitely a godlike title. Other than the legendary first ancestor, Saito stood at the top of the vampires. When dawn arrived, Dustless and the others lazily came out of their tents. As for Xiaoya, the three palaces, 3 Yi and the others, they were still sleeping soundly. As the two of them were wanted, they had spent almost the entire day avoiding the Emperor Ghost Army. They had spent a lot of energy, so it was understandable that they continued to sleep in. It's another rare sunny day. Dustless looked up at the rising sun. The warm light shone on his face, making him feel exceptionally comfortable. Yes, Lord Twilight. The honorific attracted Dustless's attention. He immediately turned his head and saw Zhongmu walking over with Sangong Kuei. Those two fellows Crowley and Freed sure are slow. They still haven't killed this cockroach yet. Dustless couldn't help but shake his head. He had no choice but to deal with this annoying bug himself. No wonder I kept having nightmares last night. It's bad luck. Misfortune. Hearing this, Baimuren frowned. Dustless was so powerful, who could bring him bad luck? He couldn't help but ask curiously, who is it? You're really stupid. Dustless laughed disdainfully. A jinx like you came knocking on my door so early in the morning. Isn't this bad luck? I'm even suspecting that I didn't wash my hands after going to the toilet yesterday. That's why I didn't manage to wash it off. You. Zhongmuren flew into a rage, and the veins on his forehead bulged. He was humiliated by Dustless in public. No matter what, he was still the lieutenant general of the Emperor Ghost Army and the eldest son of the Zhong family. How could he stand in front of his subordinates? I'm here to search for Zhong Xiaoya and the 3 palaces and 3 leaves. Zhongmuren rolled his eyes and instantly came up with a countermeasure. He said slowly, the 2 of them have stolen important secrets and must be captured for interrogation. So you think I'm harboring the 2 of them? Dustless casually hugged his head and said impatiently, cut the crap. Don't be polite. Tell me everything. Anyway, I'll treat it as *T. I'll reject all of them. You. Don't push your luck. I'm from the Zhong family. Zhongmuren's lungs were about to explode. He was so angry that his face turned red. The saber in his hand almost flew out of its sheath. Watch your tone. Sangong Kuei also glared at Dustless. Her beautiful eyes were burning with flames. She stared at him without blinking, as if she wanted to burn him up. However, Dustless didn't say anything. His face flashed with a cold light. He turned into a golden light and rushed out. In a flash he arrived in front of Sangong Kuei. His slender white right hand gently raised and greeted her without hesitation. Slap! A resounding slap landed on Sangong Kuei's fair face, and an eye-catching palm print appeared on her face. Brat. The one who should watch his tone is you. The one who needs to figure out his identity is also you. Let me tell you, just based on what you said just now, I can totally kill you. Dustless said sternly. His words were extremely cold. There was a terrifying cold light at the corner of his eyes, which made people shudder. This guy is so arrogant. Many people saw this scene and secretly clicked their tongues. They didn't expect Dustless to be so arrogant. He didn't put Zhongmu Run in his eyes at all. It could even be said that he was looking down on him. Hurry up and get lost. You should feel honored that I can condescend to talk to you. Dustless saw that Zhongmu Ren's subordinates were showing signs of anger. He didn't hesitate to ignite another raging fire. Of course, if you're dissatisfied with me, that's fine. You useless trash can come at me together. I'll only use one hand. No need. If I use one hand, I'll think too highly of you. I'll let you use 2 hands and 2 legs. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2398. He's too arrogant. Let's teach him a lesson. He's treating us like air. Let's teach him a lesson. Lord Jimu Run is the eldest son of the Ji clan, and the Emperor Ghost Army belongs to the Ji clan. This guy doesn't know the rules at all. Cut the crap. Beat him up. Some of the Emperor Ghost Army soldiers glared at Dustless as if they were really enraged. Everyone was stamping with rage as they glared at Dustless. Of course, there were also some with ulterior motives who pretended to be angry, so that they could curry favor with Jimu Run. This guy doesn't put me in his eyes at all. Father is letting him do as he pleases. Jimu Ren's eyes were bloodshot. He clenched his fists tightly as large droplets of sweat rolled down his face. Indeed, I don't put you in my eyes. Even though Jimu Run spoke softly as if he was talking to himself, Dustless, who had sharp ears, heard him clearly. He immediately mocked. Is there a need for me to respect someone like you? Is it because you're strong or because your faction is strong? None of them. You're too weak. You don't deserve my respect. Jimu Ren's veins popped out when he heard that. Those words were more painful than a few slaps to his face. You're not convinced? Come. I like to add fuel to the fire. Give me an inch and I want a mile. When I said I don't put you in my eyes, I'm not just talking about Jimu Run. I want to say that I don't put anyone in my eyes. You're all trash. Wuchen was still unmoved. His expression was as calm as the wind. His smile was so natural, so confident, and so arrogant. Is this guy stupid? The Emperor Ghost Army soldiers were speechless. Wasn't he courting death by going against the Ji clan? Ayaya. Why can't this guy hold back his anger? Didn't he say that he wanted us to get rid of Jimu Run and Ike's Hanren? It seems like he can't hold it in anymore. The 7th ancestor, Freed, and the 13th ancestor, Crowley, watched silently from a hidden place. The one who spoke was Freed, who had a joking expression on his face. Isn't that a good thing? We don't have to do anything. Instead of fighting, I prefer to find a place to sleep and enjoy a cup of afternoon tea. Leaning lazily against the cracked wall, Crowley looked like he wanted to slack off. At the same time, he raised his head and looked at Freed. Don't you think so? Lord Freed doesn't want to. Towards the end, Crowley's voice suddenly came to a halt. This was because Freed wasn't as relaxed and calm as he had imagined. Instead, he wore a solemn expression. This solemn expression was rarely seen on Freed's face. Krolik, you're too shallow in certain matters. Freed was no longer silent. Do you know what it means if Dustless takes care of Ise's Hanren and Twilight Night? He asked. It means that we have no value. What do you think will happen to people who have no value? Maybe that guy will just kill us both, let alone help us kill Saito. Hearing Freed's words, Corey's expression changed slightly. His previous laziness disappeared, replaced by a slightly solemn expression. Indeed, that was what Freed meant. What he said wasn't an alarmist. Pass down my order. Destroy that group of humans. Crowley ordered the vampire beside him. The latter nodded slightly and seemed to have gone to organize the manpower. I'm not here to quarrel with you today. Let me search your tent. Twilight Knight apparently didn't want to waste his breath. He looked at Dustless and said, Xiaoya is a traitor. The 3 mistresses and 3 leaves are also traitors. Traitors? Dustless grinned and couldn't help but sneer. I've met countless shameless people, but today, I finally met a master. Compared to you, they can't even withstand a single blow. You're the only one in the world who can distort the truth and say that your sister is a traitor. I'm just stating a fact. Please step aside. Twilight Knight said expressionlessly. Ah, what a headache. Are you itching for a beating again? Let me treat it for you. Wuchen was too lazy to talk nonsense. Without saying anything, his body flashed and turned into a flash of light that pounced out. With a shio 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 sound, Wu Chun and the others discovered that there was an additional figure in front of them. Looking down, it was surprisingly Wu Chen's familiar face. So fast. The dusky man's pupils immediately shrank. It had to be understood that this had happened in less than a second. I'd like to see what you're capable of. The Twilight Knight couldn't tolerate it any longer. He unsheathed his ghost curse equipment. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The grass-green blade buzzed and golden lightning wrapped around it. Thunder Ghost was the name of the Twilight Knight's ghost curse equipment. Die. The Twilight Knight glared at Dustless. The resentment accumulated over the years exploded. He gathered all his strength in his hands and slashed at Dustless. However, in the face of this scene, Wuchen only raised 2 fingers calmly. He's too arrogant. Twilight Knight is a lieutenant general. Reckless fool. This bastard will definitely be split in half by Lord Duskman. Many of the Emperor Ghost army sneered. Some even applauded the Twilight Knight as if victory was already in his hands. Many of the underlings who wanted to curry favor with the Twilight Knight even shouted excitedly that the Twilight Knight would win. How boring is this? Wu Chen sighed softly. The 2 fingers that he stretched out suddenly separated. Then he grabbed the long saber that was surrounded by lightning. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2399. Clang, clang, clang. A crisp explosion echoed out. It was as if it contained a great magical power, instantly attracting everyone's attention. Everyone raised their heads to look, and the scene that entered their eyes made them collapse on the spot. This is too strange. How is this possible? Is a human's hand so powerful? The onlooking Emperor Ghost Army exclaimed one after another. When they looked up, they saw Wu Chen clamping the long saber between his fingers. His expression was calm, giving people the illusion that he was clamping a mosquito. Is he really that strong? Is this guy even human? Seeing Dustless's strength, the Ghost Army took a step back. F***CK, is he still human? This was simply inconceivable. He was actually able to catch a blade with his bare hands, and he didn't even blink his eyes. Also, looking at how skilled he was, it was obvious that he was a veteran. He must be used to it. Damn it. Not to mention the others, even the leader of the incident, Jimu, widened his eyes. His eyes were as wide as a bronze bell. His previously confident expression turned into one of shock. He even couldn't help but curse. This scene, let alone the others, even Jimu himself found it difficult to accept. If an ordinary person was cut by an ordinary knife, he would bleed incessantly. Ghost curse weapons were even more powerful, especially Thunder Ghost, which belonged to the Black Ghost series. A slight wave of the weapon could cause terrible consequences of destroying the body and destroying the evidence. However, Dustless was safe and sound, as if nothing had happened. However, this was only the beginning. Ka 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 ka. A crisp shattering sound suddenly rang out, and the grass-green fragments suddenly drifted down. Seeing this scene, many people widened their eyes in astonishment, and the shock in their eyes was even more obvious. This monster crushed Lord Dark Twilight's ghost curse weapon with his bare hands? Only those with good eyesight would be able to discover that the grass-green fragments floating on the ground were the fragments of the Twilight people's weapons. As for the thunderous ghost's blade, there were also many clearly visible fragments. At a glance, it was covered in cracks, and it was as messy as a spider web. You bastard! The Twilight Warrior roared, his face ashen as he stared at the two fingers. His weapon had actually been crushed by this fellow. Was the difference between them that great? Oh, bastard, go to hell. The Dusk Demon roared crazily. The grass-green blade suddenly flashed. The golden lightning swallowed Dustless in the blink of an eye. His entire body was bathed in the scouring of the lightning. This time it should be over, right? Most people's hearts raced as they stared at Dustless, who was engulfed by the golden lightning. It was a rare sight to see a lieutenant general of the Emperor Ghost Army vs a general. You know what? We are not people from two different dimensions. Dustless gently raised his palm and looked at the golden lightning that was darting around in his palm. It was obvious that the lightning was striking him, but he didn't feel anything. It was as if he wasn't the one being attacked. There was no pain or numbness. People from two different dimensions? What do you mean? Jimu's tone was extremely hoarse, and his face was filled with gloom, as if he had suffered an unprecedented blow. Because Dustless grabbed the two fingers of the Thunder Ghost and suddenly closed them, and then broke them with force. Pa! A very loud crisp sound suddenly spread out. At this moment, the minds of all the spectators were blank. The Ghost Curse weapon of the Black Ghost series was the most powerful, but what about the ending? In the eyes of Dustless, it was just an ordinary piece of porcelain. It would break with a little pinch. It was really vulnerable. You are too weak. Holding the broken blade in his hand, Dustless glanced at the Dusk Demon, and then directly threw it out. Poochie! A wisp of dangerous fluorescent light came from the front, and the Dusk Man immediately felt a chill all over his body. He immediately felt the god of death greeting him. Without thinking, he immediately used the fastest speed in his life to escape, but he was still a step too late. His chest was pierced by a broken blade, leaving a fist-sized hole. Plop! Suffering such a fatal blow, the Dusk Demon's body immediately lost its ability to escape, like a kite with a broken string, weakly falling to the ground. Lord Dusk Demon! Seeing this scene, many of the Emperor Ghost Army exclaimed, and quickly surrounded the Dusk Demon to protect him. They all looked at Dustless unkindly. Of course, a group of people who hated him were very happy to see him unlucky. After all, the Dusk Demon was ambitious and had offended many people. Get lost! Dustless did not even bother to look at this group of small fries, and said indifferently, "You bastard, stop right there." Sangong Kuei was indeed the most loyal subordinate of the Dusk Demon. She immediately stood in front of Dustless, with a determined face, and a determined look in her eyes only revealed two words. Fearless. Don't think that I won't kill you just because you're a little prettier. Dustless opened his eyes slightly, and just glanced at Sangong Kuei, and did not say anything else. Although Dustless had some relationship with the 3 palaces and 3 leaves, he would not let Sangong Kuei go just for her. Of course, if she was tactful and was willing to leave, Dustless would not make things difficult for her. But at this moment, Sangong Kuei had obviously chosen the wrong path. Get lost. After about a few seconds of silence, Sangong Kuei still stood in front of Dustless, and impatiently walked over. You're not allowed to touch Lord Dusk Demon. Sangong Kuei realized that she was ignored, and could not help but feel angry. She immediately picked up her tachi and swept it at Dustless's neck. You're courting death. Seeing this, Dustless's eyes turned cold. Light gathered at the tip of his finger, and suddenly countless laser beams shot out of his big hand. Laser. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2400. Swish. Swish. Between his 5 fingers, a large amount of light shot out, covering the sky and covering the earth. There were too many to count, and the gorgeous luster was like a golden drizzle falling down. The whole sky was dazzling with gold and jade. Poochie, Poochie, Poochie. The unstoppable golden light hit Sangong Kuei head-on, and the light that filled the sky poured down. Her weak body was pierced with countless holes, and blood spurted out. In the blink of an eye, Sangong Kuei was turned into a beehive. Seeing such a beautiful little girl being ravaged like this, it was enough to see Dustless's indifference. Pooh! After suffering such a fatal injury, Sanya Kuei instantly lost all her strength and fell to her knees weakly. Looks like your hit rate is really bad. You can't kill me. At this moment, even though the three-palace Kuei was riddled with wounds, it still looked at Dustless fearlessly. Even though it was on its last breath, it refused to admit defeat. Ah, that seems to be the case. Dustless only smiled when he heard this. However, you seem to be mistaken about one thing. Dustless suddenly changed the topic and looked down at Sanjo Kuei expressionlessly. I'm sparing your life, not because I can't kill you, but because your sister and I know each other. As soon as he finished speaking, Dustless took a step forward and brushed past Sangong Kuei, completely ignoring him. You don't come over. When Bai Mu saw this, he panicked and roared hysterically. I am the successor of the Bai clan. If you kill me, my father will not let you off easily. He's the marshal of the Imperial Ghost Army. Even now you still have such laughable thoughts. Dustless couldn't help but shake his head as he sneered. Do you think that if I kill you, your father will fall out with me? He once betrothed his daughter to me. Why do you think he did that? If the sacrifice of such an ambitious pawn as yourself could buy my support, your father Tianli would gladly accept it. Furthermore, Dustless then squinted his eyes, which were full of mockery. I forgot to tell you, your father once gave me a special order. I want you to obey me. The Dusk Man's eyes shone with a cold light as he spoke without thinking. Obey you? Wu Chen glanced at Ji Mu and thought, how narcissistic is this guy? Does he think he's infallible? Isn't it? The Twilight Man raised his head as much as he could and said arrogantly, my ambition is the world, not a small Japan. Father is old, and his thinking is outdated. The future world doesn't need people like him, so, isn't it normal for you to submit to me? Pooh. Dustless couldn't help but laugh out loud. He looked sympathetically at the Dusk Man and said in a compassionate tone, then I'm afraid the answer I'm about to give you will disappoint you. Ideas are often beautiful, but reality is ruthless and cruel. Dustless decisively said, I'm sorry, the order your father gave me is to kill you. After Dustless's words fell, the whole scene was silent. Many people widened their eyes and looked at each other, especially the Dusk Man's subordinates, who were in disbelief. As the Emperor Ghost Army's marshal, Ji Tianli actually wanted to kill his own son? This was too unbelievable. Impossible, absolutely impossible. The Dusk Man was stunned for a moment before he roared. His expression changed drastically, and he shouted weakly, although father is ruthless, he won't kill me. He knows that I'm still useful, so he will never kill me. You think too highly of yourself. When I appeared, there was no meaning for your existence. Dustless was still ruthless and sarcastic. It sounds unbelievable, but the reality is like this. Dustless didn't talk nonsense. He suddenly took out a letter and threw it in front of the Dusk Man. Open it and take a look. I think you should recognize your father's handwriting. There are some things that I don't need to say, your father already understands. I don't believe that father will kill me. The Twilight Tribe member snatched the envelope and read it carefully. After a few seconds, his face changed. It turned green and white, with a hint of fear and hatred. This damn old man. I've worked hard for so many years, but now he wants to burn the bridge after crossing the river and kill me. The Dusk Man tore the letter into pieces and roared unwillingly. The content was simple. It only hoped that Dustless would kill the Dusk Man. The reason was simple. The Dusk Man wanted to seize power and replace Ji Tianli as the Emperor Ghost Army's marshal. Ji Tianli, who hadn't enjoyed enough power, naturally couldn't watch his son seize it. Therefore, he had given Dustless such an order. It was just that all along, Dustless had never obeyed. Sir Duskman, please don't do this. 2 streams of tears fell from Sangong Kuei's eyes as she looked at Dustless with hostility. You're courting death. Seeing this, Dustless's eyes turned cold and he swung his saber. Puchi. The shimmering fruit's heavenly sword of gathering clouds cut through Sangong Kuei's chest at the speed of light. Her skin was torn open and there was no time for her to react. What insane speed! By the time everyone reacted, Sangong Kuei was already lying in a pool of blood. What should we do? The Dusk Man's expression changed. Looking at Sangong Kuei, who was unwilling to die, his cold expression showed no mercy. He even scolded. This trash can't even stall for time. Useless. It's better for trash like this to die early. Do you have the right to talk about others? Dustless sneered. The shimmering sword of gathering clouds swept out again, and went straight for the Dusk Man's head. Gotcha. The Dusk Man's head was like a fragile watermelon. It was split in half by Dustless's saber. Brain matter splattered everywhere. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2401. Who? Seeing the death of Qianmu. The members of the Emperor Ghost Army gasped and widened their eyes in disbelief. Their shock was clear to see. The Lieutenant General of the Emperor Ghost Army, the eldest son of the Qian family, was killed without any hesitation. He didn't even give Qian Tianli any face. It's over, it's really over this time. Everyone was stunned as they stared at the cold Dustless. Their hearts trembled. Now who else wants to try? Wu Chen's clear and cold eyes looked around and asked indifferently. His tone was extremely calm, like an ancient well without ripples. However, when it entered the ears of everyone, it was like a bolt from the blue. It scared everyone to the point that they repeatedly retreated. Their expressions were as if they had seen a ghost. Quickly run. Some of the Ghost Army couldn't stand the fear and ran away. The large group of people instantly collapsed. Truly a bunch of useless trash. Seeing this, Dustless disdainfully lowered his head and sighed. His handsome face was filled with boredom. Now you see clearly what kind of person he is. Little brat, you're still a bit immature. Many people were stunned when they heard Wu Chen's thought-provoking words. They turned their heads and saw the scene that was reflected in their eyes. Everyone was so shocked that they cried out involuntarily. Sangong Kuei, wasn't this guy dead? Why did he suddenly come back to life? Did he come back to life? Everyone's attention was focused on Sangong Kuei, who was originally dead, coming back to life. His body was still riddled with wounds, but his complexion was much better. Dead. What do these people mean? How am I dead? Sangong Kuei was confused, not understanding what these people were talking about. They have this illusion because I released an illusion on everyone just now. Dustless paused for a moment and then said with a chuckle, "It's only at this time that you can see through a person's nature. Why? You saw what Twilight Knight did just now and you still want to be loyal to him?" Dustless coldly asked. "Of course, if you want to stay loyal to Jimu and want revenge, I welcome you at any time. However, this time I will really kill you. Idiot, die early and be free." Boom boom boom. A murderous aura burst out of his body and pounced on Sangong Kuei. She was already on the verge of death, but she was even more vulnerable. She was like a weak willow branch that could only go with the flow. Not anymore. After a moment of silence, Sangong Kuei suddenly shook her head. There was a trace of deep despair on her face. "I have always been loyal to Lord Murun. I never thought that I would end up like this. It's good that you know it's time to repent." Dustless did not waste any more words. He nodded silently and continued. "The Imperial Ghost Army is no longer suitable for you. Because of your sister, I won't make things difficult for you. Leave the Imperial Ghost Army. I can guarantee your safety. Thank you, Lord Dustless." Sangong Kuei was extremely grateful. He bowed deeply to Dustless. "Go go." Dustless waved his hand and said, "You're still young. Your future." Swoosh swoosh swoosh. It was also in this short moment that an ear-piercing roar pierced through the void. Several deep blue rays of light poured down, just as they were about to hit Wu Chen. These rays of light turned into ferocious white tigers, their eyes revealing a ferocious glint. Whoa! The majestic tiger was extremely domineering, and the oppressive roar made people retreat in fear. "Is it late at night?" Raising his head, he casually glanced at the giant tiger that was swallowing him. Wu Chen's deep eyes looked into the distance. A dark ink spot could be ignored, but he still found it because of his excellent eyesight, and he saw it clearly. At the same time, the tiger that descended from the sky opened its mouth at the largest angle and swallowed Dustless with a gulp. How is this possible? Is General Dustless dead? He's a top master who crushed the lieutenant general of the Dark Twilight tribe. I heard that he can fight thousands of vampires alone. How could he die? So what? That guy is too arrogant. He thinks he can be arrogant after killing the lieutenant general of the Dark Twilight tribe. But he still has other tricks up his sleeve. Dead. What a pity. General Wu Chen might have been able to lead us to a renaissance, but he fell just like that. Sigh. Many of the Emperor Ghost Army looked at the huge blue tiger that landed on the ground and sighed. It was a pity. They thought that the future of mankind was lost, and they might have lost a chance to fight back against the vampires. Of course, there were even some who were gloating. Aw. Worms one after another. Since you all want to die, I won't grant your wish. That's too much. In the stomach of the huge blue tiger, Dustless was safe and sound. He gently stretched out his slender hand and waved it forward. A straight flash of light appeared and compressed rapidly, finally turning into a huge golden sword. Heavenly Sword of Clouds. The moment the light sword was formed, Dustless did not waste any time. He raised his hand and slashed down. A huge golden light flew out. A huge crack appeared on the abdomen of the huge blue tiger. It was simple and easy. Gulp. Isn't that too scary? However, this scene was unbelievable in the eyes of others. They were so surprised that their jaws almost dislocated. He had been swallowed by the tiger. How could he still be alive? In the end, he even broke out of the abdomen. This was too strange. If you want to die, I'll grant your wish. It's late at night. Anyway, I'm here. A cold voice came from the abdomen of the tiger. Then the huge body exploded with a bang, revealing Dustless, who was unscathed. His face was bright and his eyes were bright. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2402. If you want to die, I'll fulfill your wish. Late night, I'm here anyway. A cold voice came from the tiger's abdomen. Then the huge body exploded with a bang, revealing Dustless, who was unscathed. His face was bright and his eyes were bright. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Before Dustless could finish his words, the dense attack swept over again. Uft. Uft. The pure blue light descended like a shot of a bullet, riddling Dustless's body with holes. Even so, Dustless still stood there unmoved. He was an ability user who had eaten the glint fruit. He looked up and disdainfully looked at the small black dots in the distance. He said sarcastically, "Late night, you should have heard of it. The probability of this kind of pure physical attack hurting me is 0. Even though they were a few hundred meters apart, Dustless's words crossed the space and fell into Late Night's ears. Damn monster. How did this monster do it? Late Night spat and cursed. He was really disgusted by Dustless's ability. It didn't matter if a person was strong enough to make you despair. After all, you could work hard to make up for the gap between you and him. But for an ability like Dustless, no matter how you attacked, he would be unharmed. How could such a shameless and cunning ability be broken? There was no solution at all. Kill those humans for me. It was also at this time that a group of vampires suddenly appeared. Their eyes were ferocious, like tigers that had not eaten for 10 days. They pounced on the Emperor Ghost Army, and the bloody battle began. Freed and Crowley. These two fellows have finally made their move. In that case, I don't need to deal with this group of Emperor Ghost Army anymore. Dustless leaped out, transforming into a dazzling ray of light as he pounced forward. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The golden ray of light cut across the sky like a peerless divine sword splitting the earth. The unstoppable sharpness made people feel powerless, and they didn't even have the courage to resist. Jean Late Night, who noticed that Dustless was closing in on him in an instant, had an even more colorful expression on his face. He was extremely angry. He's so strong that it's hard to deal with him. He also has a move that's immune to physical attacks. His speed is also so fast. How can we fight him? Jia Late Night cursed again and immediately ran away. He was a sniper and was responsible for long-range attacks. Close combat was not his forte, especially when the enemy was dustless. You want to run after ambushing me? The sneer was accompanied by a blinding ray of light. The ray of light was simply too fast, and the moment he stood up and took a step forward, the Dusky Witch was already heavily injured. Poochie. The light accurately hit the Dusky man's calf, and Knee Demon was immediately penetrated. He screamed ah, and fell to the ground. His handsome cheeks were bleeding. TSK, how tragic. What a pity for that face. The laughter of Schadenfreude was so ear-piercing that the Dusk people turned their heads and saw Dustless's ugly face. It's you again. The Dusky Witch clenched his fists. His eyes were sunken, and the light that shot out was scarier than a beast and more threatening than an eagle. What do you mean it's me again? Dustless was speechless. This guy ambushed him, and he didn't want him to find trouble with him? What kind of logic was this? Bang. Taking advantage of Dustless's carelessness, the Dusky Witch fired another shot of blue light at Dustless's head. You're too careless. I'm also from the Emperor Ghost Army. Tens Ho. The blue bullet was suddenly engulfed by a ball of black fire. It was so fast that it was incinerated in the blink of an eye. Not even a trace of residue was left. Sorcery, it's definitely sorcery. Seeing this scene, Jia Late Night's eyes almost exploded. His ultimate move was nothing in front of Dustless. The other party didn't even move his hand, he just blinked his eyes. It's right to feel that it's hard to accept. In fact, in this world, you can't understand. There are countless things that are beyond your knowledge. What you know before is just a side of it. Wu Chen's expression was gloomy, as oppressive as a dead tree bark. His lifeless aura made Wu Late Night shudder, and the blood in his entire body boil. Jia Late Night, although your surname is also Dusky, you hate the Dusky family very much. You can't wait for this family to be destroyed as soon as possible, right? Dustless looked at Jia Late Night deeply and said, in other words, you didn't come to save Dusky Witch just now. If you really want to save him, you won't wait for me to kill him. Let me guess, it's that kid Ike's Hanren, right? Hearing this, Jia Late Night looked at Dustless in shock, and immediately denied. Nonsense, his surname is Ike's, and I'm from the Dusky family. He's from the Branch family, and the Dusky family is the main family, even if I'm the adopted son. Dustless curled his lips and sneered. You speak so righteously, but you just want to protect Ike's Hanren. Idiot, you think you can protect him? Let me tell you, no matter what, that kid will be torn into pieces. Bang bang bang. As if he was really angered by Dustless's words, Jia Late Night fired again. The bullets whistled and penetrated Dustless's body, leaving a few holes. An ordinary person would definitely die, but this kind of simple injury didn't affect Dustless at all. His face was as calm as stagnant water. A bright and warm golden light emerged from his wounds, and in an instant, they were healed by the Glint Fruit's elemental conversion ability. Hateful monster. Jia Late Night closed his eyes in despair. He really felt powerless against Dustless. It's good that you're in despair, farewell. Dustless didn't waste any time. All kinds of divine weapons appeared from the space behind him, and he shouted, King's treasure. Shoo shoo shoo. Groups of sharp weapons shot out at the same time. Jia Late Night was a person with broken legs, so he couldn't move. He could only watch helplessly. Poochie. Similar to the method used to kill Yuichiro, Jia Late Night was also pierced by countless weapons, leaving bloody holes in his body. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2403. You will not have a good ending. Xiao Late Night's eyes were wide open. His eyes were bloodshot, and his eyes, which were like copper tombs, turned blood red. His exaggerated eyes were terrifying, as if they were going to swallow Wu Chun. Still struggling on your deathbed? Dustless narrowed his eyes and flicked his slender hand. A cold light shot out from his eyes. Amaterasu. In a flash, Jean Late-Night's battered body burned with black flames. The black light looked like it came from hell. In an instant, the smell of burnt human flesh could be smelled. A cool breeze suddenly drifted past. That nauseating smell entered everyone's nostrils, causing many people to vomit uncontrollably. Kill me if you have the guts. You bastard. Jean Late-Night, who was being tortured by the Amaterasu, roared loudly. No, no, no. Dustless shook his finger and said coldly, wouldn't that be letting you off too easily? Don't think that I don't know what you are thinking. You want to scold me because you want me to kill you as soon as possible. How can there be such an easy thing in this world? I want to burn you to death slowly with the Amaterasu. Dustless's voice seemed to be filled with magic. The black fire burning on Jean Late-Night's body was immediately extinguished and became abnormally dim. But because of this, the burning speed of the flames slowed down. But when it landed on a person, it was extremely painful and torturous as it slowly burned to death. Aha! A skinny middle-aged man stood above the ruins. His eyes were as clear as spring water. This was the second primogenitor, Chi-Tung. At this moment, he was rubbing his chin and looking into the distance with a faint smile on his face. It's time to take a look. Chi-Tung's gaze moved slowly again. A huge city rose from the east and Chi-Tung looked over. The third primogenitor, Krulutsupizi. A ray of light shot out from his onyx-like eyes, giving off the feeling of a rising sun in the dark night. It was exceptionally dazzling and attracted a lot of attention. Swish, swish, swish. Chi-Tung turned into a black shadow and sped away. His body was as light as a swan, and his every movement was natural. Even the uneven mountains were like flat plains, and his movements were exceptionally light. From this, one could see Chi-Tung's power. Even though he had stepped down for thousands of years, he hadn't regressed. In fact, he seemed to have improved. As for Chi-Tung's identity, it was rather complicated and mysterious. Not only was he the second ancestor of vampires, but he was also the person in charge of the 100 Knights cult. Even the Seraph of Termination project was related to him. It could even be said that Saito was the one who used Yuichiro and Michael as guinea pigs for experiments. Ta-ta-ta-ta. In the gloomy corridor, light footsteps could be heard. Although they were soft and almost inaudible, those with good ears could still hear them clearly. It seems like an uninvited guest has arrived. Inside the brightly lit palace, Kalulu raised his eyes that were like spring water. Ripples spread out in his eyes as he looked into the distance. He narrowed his eyes and carefully observed the figure that was walking over from the dark corridor. Seems familiar. Krulu frowned slightly. Confusion appeared in his eyes. He couldn't help but scratch his head and recall his experiences over the past thousands of years. He felt that this mysterious man in a black suit was somewhat familiar, but he couldn't remember who he was. Oh, don't you remember me? At the same time, Saito also walked into the lobby. He looked around, took a deep breath, and said with a smile, I smell something special, Krulu. What do you mean? Also, who are you? Don't talk to me like I'm an old friend. I'm not familiar with you. Krulu glared at him coldly and shouted in an unfriendly tone. She was on her guard. This guy must be extraordinary to be able to pass through so many defenses. Only Dustless could do this. Chi-Tung's eyes froze when he heard this. He asked in surprise. Don't you remember me? We met 1,000 years ago. Have you forgotten? The man who always followed the primogenitor. Krula's eyes narrowed when she heard Chi-Tung's words. Two people appeared in her mind. They were both the second primogenitor. One of them was Chi-Tung, and the other was Ulji, who was also the second primogenitor. Why are you here? Your hair wasn't like this back then. Kru immediately clenched his fists as his little face twitched. It was as if he had encountered a dangerous natural enemy. His entire body felt uneasy. Even though his little face was calm and collected, it was now covered with a haze. Don't be so nervous. I'm not as scary as you think. Chi-Tung smiled gently. It was hard to imagine that he was the second primogenitor. He gave off a stable and reliable impression. Even so, Krulu was still nervous. She forced a smile and said, "Oh, is that so?" Then Rig Stafford. "No, that's your original name." "That's right. I'm cheating now." Cheating nodded and said abruptly, "I'm no longer a vampire. Rick Stafford is my vampire name. It's only natural for me to change it." "Before that, I have a question for you." Suddenly, Sato's face changed, revealing an extremely terrifying and gloomy look. "I smell a unique scent. It seems to be a human. I remember that guy's name. I think it's Wuxia. He seems to be the only general of the Emperor Ghost Army. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates." Chapter 2404. Thump. Hearing Seta's words, Kulu became even more nervous. She didn't know Seta's background before, but now she knew that he wasn't a friendly person. "Oh, Kulu, don't be so afraid. I'm not here to cause trouble for you." Saito seemed to have seen through Kulu's fear. He smiled warmly like the sun. However, such a warm and heart-piercing smile didn't erase the shadow in Kulu's heart. Instead, it made her feel even more uncomfortable. This was the smile of a devil. "The matter between Wu Chun and me, where exactly did this fellow get the news?" Kelula's heart was filled with doubts. His crystal pupils were covered with a layer of mist. He was puzzled. Suddenly, he looked at Saito's thin figure, and felt that this figure was too terrifying. It was as if no secret could be hidden from his eyes. "Oh, looking at your expression. Does that mean you admit it?" Saito pursed his lips and chuckled. He rubbed his fingers in boredom and continued, "I heard that Fried had some kind of premeditated plan with him. It seems that he wants that guy to kill me." "I don't understand. I don't know about the deal between them." Kula shook her head indifferently. This time she really didn't know. Dustless didn't tell her about the deal between him and Fried. Therefore, Kulu really didn't know about it. This was the truth. "I know you don't understand. I took the liberty to visit today, because I want to see what's so special about that guy." Seta's playful expression suddenly disappeared. He said seriously, "To be able to subdue the third ancestor of the vampire queen, Kulutsupizi, and my rebellious son, Fried. To be honest, I'm a little curious about this kind of person." Saito spoke with confidence. A hint of caution flashed in his eyes. Even though he spoke calmly, he was actually quite afraid. He knew the world of vampires better than Dustless. If he wanted Kulu to listen to him, he must have the strength to crush her. Moreover, his cunning son, Fried, was flirting with Dustless. It was enough to tell that he was extraordinary. "I'm sorry, but your hopes are dashed. I know what you want from me. It's about Dustless, right?" "Actually, I don't know much about him. In fact, I don't even know as much as you do. So, you should give up." Kulu said coldly. She really didn't know Dustless. In the past few years, the number of times the two sides had met could be counted on one's fingers, not to mention understanding each other. Dustless had always been mysterious. "You don't understand?" Chi Tung's eyes flashed with a cold light as soon as he finished speaking, and the elegance on his face disappeared. His expression changed faster than flipping a book. "I'm just stating a fact. Since you know that he's my boss, have you ever seen a boss tell his own secrets to his subordinates?" Kruguru was full of vigilance. She had already smelled a ghastly killing intent, and she felt as if she had fallen into an ice cellar. Her entire body shivered uncontrollably, and she felt extremely uncomfortable. "You're right, but these words aren't enough to make me leave." Chi Tung smiled slyly, and his handsome face revealed a sinister expression. "Even if you really don't know Kulu, you're still a hostage with value." No matter what, Kulu was related to Dustless. "You want to deal with me?" Hearing this, Kulu was like a flood that broke through a dam, and a murderous intent spread unstoppably. Although she wasn't as strong as the second ancestor, it didn't mean that she would just sit there and wait for death. The great ancestor will never let you go. Knowing that her chances of winning were close to zero, Kulu had no choice but to use the first ancestor, the origin of vampires. However, Cheating only shook his head. "Are you an idiot? Your reaction is really slow. Didn't I say before that I'm now called Qi? I've abandoned my previous name. And at the same time, I've also abandoned my identity as a vampire. Do you understand? Not to mention that I'm no longer a vampire. Even if I'm still the second ancestor. Do you think you can make me leave just by threatening me? What a joke. Qi couldn't help but curl his lips, and his handsome face was full of disdain. Go to hell. Seeing that the negotiation was useless, Klulu shot out, his black afterimage disappearing in the blink of an eye, rushing forward like a meteor. Poochie! The black shadow pierced through Qi, and with a cracking sound, one of Qi arms was cut off. His sleeves were also torn off, and his black suit was very obvious. You! Qi face turned ugly, and he turned to look at Klulu in surprise. After not seeing you for so many years, you've become much stronger. Looks like you've worked very hard. Most importantly, that guy taught me well. Klulu smiled in high spirits and said proudly, the second ancestor? He's worse than I thought. Qi wasn't angry when he heard that. When he heard that guy taught me well, he immediately understood. Even though they were on opposite sides, he couldn't help but frown. You're talking about Dustless, right? TSK, it's really surprising that he can make you so much stronger. At that moment, even I didn't react in time. These words were from the bottom of his heart. When Klulu launched a sneak attack, his speed was too fast, and when he realized it, his arm was already broken. But Qi suddenly changed the topic and sneered. Klulu, no matter how well he taught you, you're still not Dustless. Qi suddenly shook his shoulder, and a clang 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 sound was heard, as if iron chains were rolling. Then his broken arm was reattached, and it was as good as new. The most terrifying thing was that Qi body had changed drastically, and dense iron chains shot out from his back like a spider web. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus more chapters, 3,000 rewards plus more chapters, 1,000 rating plus more chapters, 500 automatic subscriptions plus more chapters. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.